And we're off. So, what we were talking about just now, right before this came on here not long ago, is my desire to watch reaction videos because I actually find them entertaining. I think honestly, what it stems from is the fact that I just enjoy like I watch the thing and then I don't want to rewatch the entire thing in like its entirety, but it's easier to watch reaction videos. And then I also enjoy like watching people react to them. And if they like it, then it's really nice because then they're like, it's almost like a weird, maybe it sounds sad now that I'm explaining it, but
Cut.
it's like a weird excitement where I'm like happy that somebody is like also happy about this thing and is like talking about this thing that I am enjoying. And I'm like, man, maybe that's what like, having
Like
friends is
Friends,
about.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I'm really
yeah.
realizing slowly as I'm talking this through now that this is kind of sounding a little sad.
Whoops, no backing that one up.
That's fine.
That one's
It's
over.
fine. Full swing. It's like,
I'll tell you the thing that I think that's important with it is that and my favorite part that still gets like chronicled, I guess, is when people do like the cams or whatever, like in movie theaters, like on opening nights for things. Those are
yes.
important, and I think that I could push back on the just friends part of it being like the only reason why you enjoy it is because it's also like kind of just like almost replaying that emotion when you were like watching that for the first time, because
Yeah.
that it's not the same on a rerun, it's not the same on a rewatch. So I think there's
Yeah,
a
it's
little bit
definitely
more.
yeah, it's definitely like an excitement thing where I'm just like watching them, it's like, yeah, it's like re-going through those emotions. I purposely love watching those episodes of like a show where like something wild's about to happen and then like you're just watching the person's reaction.
Hmm.
So I love watching reaction videos and I know that is like a niche, I mean it's not really a niche, it's a pretty big niche considering there's
Yeah, I think so.
you know
That's like people like I don't not like regurgitating stuff, but like just like React content in general. It got huge from the Fine Bros or whatever it was that started it, right?
oh god. Yeah, well,
That was like
dude,
the most popular.
yeah, I know, and their videos are like I all straight up just they just tell people how they want them to react, and that's what happens. It's
Yeah.
always good. I mean, there's still like an entertainment value to it, so it's like I can't knock it too much because it's like, you know, and they're not really like broadcasting it as like off. I guess they kind of are as like authentic reactions, but it's one of those where like I don't know. I don't know. I
Yeah.
just do like reaction videos. Okay, so this is why, and the reason why I'm kind of talking about the reaction videos is because I've been watching a lot of Ted Lasso reaction videos. Hence why we got the jersey. This is the only soccer jersey I've got. It was definitely bought by a thinner version of myself, so it's a little tight, but we're making it work. And then you actually have the legit,
I
jersey.
just
So
actually thought about it, and even I just realized that like I don't it was probably deliberate when they were like printing them, but there's no actual front sponsor, which I think in first season would have been Dubai Air, and then the second one was Banter. I just
yeah,
like made that connection. I've had this for a while, and I was like, oh yeah, seeing it on screen like there isn't like a sponsor, which I guess makes sense. But I was like, it does seem kind of like it's open here. Like there's a lot of like there's plain space,
yeah, that's
but
true. I mean,
it's for the
I
best.
do either way, I feel like it wouldn't have been a bad thing because it's a reference to the show, so like it wouldn't have been a big deal whether they put it on either way. But
Yeah,
I do wonder if maybe the thought process there was like that they actually were like, well, we know that it changes, so you know,
that's true. Yeah, I didn't even I was thinking immediately like just they would have to like also have the company pay because it's also sponsorship, and it's like that's a weird area because it's like for creating from the show that was advertisement, but then the shirt is also advertisement. It
I
also could
do
have been that.
yeah. I do love that, by the way, that like TV shows in general, like I just love in movies. So part of my problem is this background. I'm just like, I can't focus on a topic. Here we go. My thing with movies is that like I've watched so many movies and I love movies and I love watching videos on how they're made and production and lighting and all that that goes into it. So I notice that when I watch the movie, like I'll just be like, oh, I see what they're trying to get you to focus on because camera like went slightly out of focus there, but now it's in focus here. And it's like, or you just see like the lighting, it's like, oh, he's standing in a brighter spot, or the light got brighter all of a sudden when he figured out something, like just something like that.
Ooh,
Like
I
I
have a
just
good
noticed that
one.
stuff.
Do you know what this one's
Oh,
from?
huh?
Do you know? I was just trying to think of a perfect example of that. There's a Spider-Man movie where
Yes.
the stoplight, okay, goes from
Yeah,
green
that would
from
be
red.
yeah,
Okay.
and that was actually the one of the ones that popped in my head immediately. It's Homecoming, and it's
Mm-hmm.
when he figures out that Peter's Spider-Man, and the light turns green, and I'm like, that's a perfect like example of like using the setting or lighting to like kind of further something or signify something.
Yep.
Um, but I was like I love watching. One of the things I love watching is the like product placement in movies, and you're just like, wonder who they're sponsored by. Weird that everybody in the thing is using a Windows phone.
Yeah. Yeah. A
Like,
Windows phone, or they're like a really big fan of like one specific drink that's
yeah, or
everywhere.
every car in the entire thing is just like a Mercedes, and you're like, oh, so everybody drives Mercedes, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, what's a middle class neighborhood look like? And it's like, this is just an average Joe family with a perfect brand new
Yep.
Mercedes. And it can't get
I,
damaged, also. It can't get damaged in the show because they don't get
mhm.
damaged. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like pristine, or they like work way better than they should in real life.
Yeah.
So that are like whenever you see like every person is like taking a drink and they're like, ah, yes, my drink.
And they move it in their hand. So it's like,
Yeah, and they're like, and
yeah.
it's funny too because sometimes like you grab a drink, you're like this, like I got my drink, and you take a drink, but then sometimes you see them in movies and they're like holding it like this, and you're like, what the actual hell are you doing? Like that is who saw that and was like, yeah, that's good, keep it going.
Yeah. So natural. You're killing it.
Yeah.
This looks great.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, what a rant to start on.
But that's coming
Um,
back. So, yay.
Yeah, we're bringing it back to the Ted Lasso coming back, which I think what connected me from that conversation to this is that I've been watching a lot of reaction videos of Ted Lasso stuff, and it's great because it's a show that like catches you off guard because everybody goes into it with like, oh, it's a comedy with Jason Sudeikis, and then all of a sudden it's like halfway through you're like bawling your eyes out and you're like, what the hell? Like it does that all the time, the show, and I love that they don't take things too far with like they don't like like even this divorce or something, like they don't take it too far. They just kind of like deal with it like a real thing and then kind of move on. Or like characters are like actually honest with each other and you're like, wow, that they don't actually need to hide things from each other to make a show and have drama later.
Or drag it out for like 2 seasons when it could be like one sentence and like cleared up.
Yeah, like they have times where like in an episode, like the couple will have a fight, they'll talk about the fight with other people, realize that they were wrong in the situation or what they could have done better in the situation, and then come back, and then by the end of the episode it's like, oh, they like resolved the conflict by actually talking about it and approaching it from a level head, and I was like, wow, that's pretty good.
I
That's
quite
not
literally
normal.
just watched that episode that you're talking about because I just walked up here from.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
It's
no,
weird
I'm
that you
referring
picked
to a
that one
specific
exactly.
episode,
Okay.
but
It
in
was
general they do a good job of that.
okay. Yeah, it just coincidentally was yeah, okay. Not spoiling anything, but yeah,
Yeah.
that was it.
Another thing too, which we were kind of talking about beforehand before we jumped on, is that I do on the rewatch think that season two was a lot better than I thought it originally was. Because again, like I thought a lot of the like Nate stuff, I thought it was like rushed and like wasn't done well or thoroughly. And then I went back and watched it and I was like, oh my God, there's so many things in the show that like they totally were leading up to it in like certain ways. Like there's certain like specific moments where like like the whole idea is that like that he feels like Ted was becoming like his father figure kind of thing and was like giving him praise that his actual dad wasn't giving him and was supporting him, and then all of a sudden Ted kind of like started giving that praise and started doing that for Roy, and it was one of those where like there's moments that they put in there specifically where you kind of realize that like, oh, that's where his head's going, like Nate's head. And they have it like juxtaposed with like his dad like telling him from the newspaper thing that like, you know, um so being humble is talking about yourself less, or whatever quote he says that's like, just like, good parenting, yes.
Snippy.
Um yeah, so it's like I just like on rewatch, I'm just like appreciating it more for like, oh, I like how they did things. Like I actually enjoyed that aspect of that.
Yeah, they cut it up. So like it was even just like they let the moment like sit a lot, especially like anything like the first like couple of episodes. That instead of like going straight on to the next thing, there was like an awkward pause when he would say something like off the cuff or like just like didn't match the vibe of like what was happening in the scene or anything. And it just kind of
Mhm.
like stuck there for like 1, 2, 3, and then they kind of like moved on from it. Not enough to like linger on, but still just be like, oh, okay. So that's like there's an unresolved thing there, and it's like always in the background, but not too much. So that it was like the entire season, but it just got progressively worse when he was when like Roy went to go coach for the first time. Then it went
Mhm.
from like the really really happy song to then like the brief like a piano like or no, it wasn't a piano, it was I don't know what instrument it was, but it was like you could hear it like it was like strings that were like starting to go crazy, like they're, it was like, oh, something's like crossing in his head, like that was supposed to be like a
Yeah.
peak and valley straight down. So
The
that went on.
did I make the joke last week on the podcast, but I saw it was like that thing where it's like in video games where it's like that person will remember this. And like I was watching a reactor. I think I did talk about this last time, but I'll still talk about it because it's funny.
Yeah.
Where the reactor was like every time that Nate like something happened and Nate would like give a side eye, it was like Nate did not like that. And it's like I just picture that like popping up at the top of the thing that's like, doop, Nate didn't like what you just did. Like or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
And then you just see like his the bar of relationship just slowly dwindling.
Yeah. Slowly just going down, building that, yeah, building the resentment and everything that was coming in. But yeah, imagine liking, I know it's a terrible, terrible sport.
I know. Can you
That's
believe
why the
that?
most popular thing in America is just a TV show with it in the background. That's just how that goes, I guess.
Yeah,
But
that's
no,
because
it's got the what it was. Oh no, I was trying to go to. So no, that's too. It's kind of too early. What I was going off. I was trying to think about if they're actually going to like ascend. I know they're going like into the Premier League, but do you think they'll actually eventually end the series with them winning, or is it going to be like, hey, they lost, but then they learned so much all along the way? Because I could see either.
I could see either, but I feel like winning is where they would want to resolve the whole thing because I think that it would be like kind of like a end to all conflicts. Like we finally made it as a team and we won it. But I also could see it being like oh, they make it there, and then I just don't know how they would end it. Because like if they ended it that way, I feel like there would be a large part of the population watching this show that would feel like it was unresolved and that they wanted to see, it's like watching Pokemon for 20 years and just, Ash wins absolutely nothing. And you're like, what? This is the main character. Like, why is he not able to win anything?
Yeah, that's okay. That's also interesting too. An interesting
That would be an
thought.
interesting
If they
go.
don't win
Yeah.
it, but they relegate West Ham,
Ooh, that could be like a good end of the thing where they, yeah, at the
wouldn't
end of
they
the
be so
season,
much
it's like,
higher? Like, okay, again, American brain, but aren't they like
well,
so much higher, like in the standings? Or is that like at least implied that like it would take a while for them to get knocked out, or can you get knocked out in one season
I
if
think you
they're
get
that
knocked out in one
bad?
season because if you do poorly in that season, you end up in the like if you do ended up at the bottom, yeah, I think you would be able to get relegated immediately because I think
Okay,
you could be promoted every season. So
just a matter of
yeah,
one season. Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
the only thing with that is that the West Ham would have to be like bad the whole show, and I feel like they would build it up where they were good for the whole show. But I don't know.
Hmm. For Everton, yeah.
Yeah.
I
What
don't know.
is it?
It's
Is it
so
like the
hard,
what is it like the FA Cup? What is or something like that? Maybe that's where it is. Like maybe they beat him in the FA Cup or something like that. I could see that happening.
huh? Oh, that's kind of wild too. The longest stay in the Premier League. And is the
Yeah, that's
FA Cup
interesting.
really important? Because I know it was also the last episode that I watched as well, or like the previous one.
Well, I mean, the FA Cup is like, I mean, it's basically like a tournament of all of the European teams and everything. Are you saying that sarcastically? Is that what that was?
No, no, I'm not.
Oh,
Like that
okay.
was no, that was like part of the episode, but it wasn't like a finale or anything. It was like mid-season, and it was like, oh, it's important, but it's like it wasn't the ending or anything. But it came up early along. Okay,
Yeah,
for lower
huge. So
tier.
huge for lower tier teams. So yeah, so it's a big deal. See, I feel like I could see that happening. I feel like I could see them being like they're both doing pretty well over the course of the season, and then they meet in the FA Cup and they win in the FA Cup. Because I feel like relegating them means that they would have to be like performing badly the whole season, and it would be one of those where it wouldn't really be a storyline then if they were performing poorly. Like I think it's better if Nate is doing well with the team, and like
Yeah,
coaching them up well, but like, he still has that like he's missing something and it's like he was longing for to be back with them.
yeah. I think that's probably they kind of have to go in that direction with like he's getting everything he wanted, and man, just watching that again, like the past two episodes, they like did a really good job of making him very hateable, even in just
Hmm.
that, just from that one thing happening, and like seeing how often they went back to like him like scrolling on his phone like on Twitter for mentions and stuff, like anything using his name. It was only like part of the 30-minute episode, and I was just like, oh my god, like seriously, like that's
Yeah.
like that became like his character for the like two episodes. So that period was literally just like scrolling Twitter, and I was like, come on. So realistic, I get it, but also I was just like, okay, okay.
Yeah, I mean, you get it if you watch like the whole first season. You see how he is. Like, you learn how unbelievably like in need of like attention and like just actual praise he needs. And then you watch like the second season, and you're like, okay, this is where like now he's not getting that, and then this is what's happening because of that. So it's like
Yeah.
I could see it. I mean, he was overly aggressive, I think, at times for sure, because there was definitely times where I was like, okay, that's a bit like much. Like he's being a real dick here. Like,
I think where he told the it was like Colin or whatever his name was,
yeah,
like he's like a painter, but he's like if he makes like paintings for Holiday Inn instead of like
yeah,
actual
that
things. I
moment.
was like, whoa, ugh,
Yeah, that moment or that one where he ended the episode like just like telling that one kid that took over his job that if he ever does anything like that again, he'll I forget what he said, he'll like
make his
ruin him or
life
something.
miserable, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was something ridiculous and I was like, okay, that's a bit over the top.
Yeah, just yeah, it got kind of psychotic at some points, but it'll be
Mhm.
interesting if they actually try. I don't know if they can like make them like a redemptive figure eventually in the end. I don't
I
know.
don't know.
It's really
I'm
hard,
excited
especially when
for
they
it.
get to be that big of a show and like have to avoid like a cliche ending because there's only so many different ways you could do it with it being like something different. But
Well, I feel like they could be very real. Like, like I know this is kind of like a random like drop, but like the show BoJack Horseman, which is like a kind of absurd show in the beginning, but like the show just kind of ends and it's like not everything is resolved and like life is life. And I was like, oh, okay, like that's new. It's like I feel like normally shows have to have like some kind of happy ending or something that goes on, and this show and BoJack was just like, that's life. Sometimes it doesn't end well. Sometimes nothing gets resolved. Some things get resolved. Who knows?
there isn't like a
Sometimes people
pleasant
change.
arc.
Sometimes they don't.
Yeah, there's not like a very good arc and where it just kind of like ends.
Yeah.
So I get that.
Which like I get makes good television, because then it gets the most amount of people that want to watch it because people naturally like storylines like that. But it is just kind of funny because I'm just like, like when I finished that episode or that show, I felt like so weird after ending it because I was just like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
like
just
so it
like
was just
that's it.
yeah. So I could see this show just doing like, like I almost feel like this show could end in one of those like I could see them losing, and I feel like it could end with that kind of idea that like everybody's on a good path and is like you know is trending upwards, and that's where we're going to end it, like rather than like seeing the end of their arcs. It's like like they're doing well and trending well, and you're just not going to see the end of like what that process is, but that they're making like it's one of those where like I feel like I could see them ending it and being like where you finish the show and then you're like, oh, like they're going to be all right, like I don't know what's going to happen, but I think that they'll be fine, like I think they'll get through it.
Yeah, no, that's what I can agree to. There's definitely gonna be give and take. If they just ended it on all good, it's gonna be kind of just like it's gonna be boring because it's just like there's no contrast at all. If they're
Mhm.
just like, oh yeah, no, everything worked out, and then like all of a sudden, also Ted like got back with his wife and everything else worked out, I'd be like, okay, come on, that's supposed
See,
to be a
that's
little
where
bit
I
more
feel like the show,
realistic.
yeah, like the show, I feel like the show could do one of those things where like, like Roy and her, like, you know how they did that with a relationship where you're like, I don't know if they're like, they're gonna be okay. Like I could see the show ending where like, they break up and it's fine. Like something similar to that. Like a plot line where it's like yeah, it didn't end exactly how you wanted it to with them being together and everything's happy, but they're doing
Yeah,
okay still,
yeah,
you know?
that's where that's where I'm at too. And I think that's the most interesting way. So
But
yeah, I could see that part, especially yeah, Roy and Keely's relationship. I don't know about that. That's gonna end up. But I also was still trying. I was still trying to finish season 2 before season before season 3 starts tomorrow. So we'll see also how I feel going into it with a couple more
mhm,
episodes. But yeah, it'll be, I don't know. At least they try and make it like somewhat realistic and not just be like the same thing you've seen before, I
yeah.
guess.
So either way, we're excited about it, and yeah, I now think it might be a good time to transition
I was trying to
to.
find the stat on the side that I was trying to open up with. So I'm going to
Well,
wing it because I don't actually have it.
all right,
And I was
wing it,
trying to come across it.
bring it to me.
Okay. So the thing, and I'm probably going to butcher it because I don't have the numbers. And I couldn't find it for whatever reason, even on covers. But so the Bears' defensive EPA was obviously last year, if you didn't already know that.
No,
And
shocking.
then I think the whole thing was you're supposed to want it to be negative. The number's supposed to be want to be negative. I think the Bears were at 0.123 and Lions more or less were about this, they were 31st, but the Bears had almost double.
Oh,
So they were literally a steep
lovely.
drop off the cliff from basically like anything on defense and stopping anything. I just heard it when I was coming home and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So like I knew it was bad. And I think watching it was bad, but I just didn't care anytime defense was on the
Well, because
field.
it was exciting. Like you were watching Justin Fields like run around like
Yeah.
a crazy man.
I was like, great, let him score so the offense can go back on the field. Like,
Yeah,
whatever. I don't really
literally.
care. I know you're not going to like get an interception because the other scary part, well, going into free agency signings was that Jaquan Brisker led the team in sacks with 4, was it? Or was it 3?
It's I think the leading wasn't the leading sack person on the team Roquan Smith
It was
or something
Brisker,
like that.
the rookie
Was it Brisker?
safety, which is even
God,
crazier because Roquan was here for a few weeks.
that is unbelievable.
Yeah. So, naturally, going into that, how do you address the defense? Well, you go into the free agency signings.
Well, I think first let's start with the timeline. So I think
So much has
timeline wise,
happened.
we gotta start first with something that happened that was pretty big. It's a pretty decent size thing that occurred in the fact that the number one overall pick was traded. Uh, that doesn't happen all the time. And so, in this scenario, though, I want to say right off the bat, actually talking seriously about it, I honestly could not be happier with the just what we got in return because people got so hung up on the fact that they needed to have like whatever draft picks or whatever, like, a third round pick or blah, 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 whatever it was. People got so hung up on that. And I don't know, just to me, it was one of those where like, you get a draft pick, you trade down to 9, which is still in the top 10. You get a second round pick this year. Yeah, it's a late second, but you'll find out why it's a late second in a second. And it's then you get a first round pick next year. So you have 2 first round picks next year. You get a second round pick in 2025, which is where people got all hung up because they were like, well, we should have gotten the first round pick then. But then you get DJ Moore. Then like I'm which is also funny because DJ Moore was just at the bottom of the list, and it was like, wow, you
Yeah.
got all these cool things. Oh, by the way, you got DJ Moore. And it was
Well,
just
that's where it
like
was. I don't think people were hung up on it. I think people didn't finish reading the tweet or
they
whatever,
had
which
to
is
have
was
because it
me.
was it was one of those where you look at it and you're like, that's wild. They didn't get that third. Oh, they got DJ Moore. Okay, that makes more sense. Like you're just like, all right, that's why because otherwise that 61 pick would probably be their 39th pick, I think that they have. And then, you'd have that second round pick in 2025 would be a first round pick in 2025. Fine.
Yeah.
I am beyond ecstatic that we got DJ Moore. If you look at DJ Moore's stats, he is basically top 10 in the league in pretty much every measurable stat for wide receivers that you could look at. The only thing is that he's had, who Kyle Allen or whatever his name
Teddy
is,
Bridgewater, Kyle Allen, Baker Mayfield. One more I'm missing,
Sam
maybe.
Darnold.
There it is. Yep.
Sam Darnold throwing it to him. I think you briefly had PJ Walker throwing to him too. So like, I just an assortment of quarterbacks that are less than desirable, I think is what I would say to be nice. So ultimately, the fact that he's top 10 in like every statistics possible is a testament to his own ability. So for me, getting him is insane because for the like I honestly was kind of low key afraid because I was like, this free agency class is not good wide receiver wise. And I was like, our best bet is to just end up getting like Jackson Smith and Jibba, like kind of mid to late first round if we trade back again. That was like my best case scenario for
Oh,
in
you
my
didn't think
mind
there
for
was going
wide
to be
receiver.
a proven, young, actually good now and still in the future person like available?
Yeah,
Because
no,
like
I
me neither.
did not. And the fact that he's only 25 years old, and the other issue too is that his contract is just so absurdly well put together for us
But we're the
that like,
Bears. Like it literally
dude,
it's like they made it and thought about like it was going to be for them in the
yeah,
first
like he
year.
has like no dead cap out of the last 2 years, and he's making like 16 the second year and 14 the third year or something like that. It's something stupid where he's like basically going to be a cap hit of like a mid-level wide receiver, and he's our number one wide receiver, and he's playing like a number one. So, and then by the time he's done with that contract, he's going to be 28 years old. So you're talking possibly a second extension if he's really playing, up to that. So it's just it to me it's just crazy because you needed to get Justin Fields a reliable number one because and I've heard this term used a lot before. I think I've listened to like Adam Hogue talk about this. Like you need that receiver that's going to push down everybody else's like where they're at on the depth chart, and then by doing that, you're going to make the depth chart seem a lot more just like talented for what it is. So so you get DJ Moore, he's number one. Now you look, Darnell Mooney's your number two, Clear Claypool's your number three, and then you look and you got Equinemius St. Brown at number four, and you're like, okay, well, that's a much better four than a number one, which is what he was trying to be for half the season.
Yeah.
He's a good blocking wide receiver, but he's not worth being a top two receiver on our team. But having him at four, well, that's like okay, I'm absolutely happy he's on the team.
Yep.
Then Velus Jones Jr., who's got talent, and yeah, he had his fumbles, he had his issues, whatever. He was fast. He
No
was
pressure.
showing effort to like improve. He was becoming a dangerous returner. You got him as your five on the roster. I mean, that's a pretty solid top five receiving, like, or not top five, but five receiving core
Yeah.
that you can build on for the future. And the fact that all of them are 26 years old and under is crazy.
Yeah, how the tables turn from that sounding like it's a terrible idea to an overpay
Mm-hmm.
to all of a sudden sounding like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good room. You could have you can have like somebody go down and still have back. I mean like it's wild to see that turn around that quickly, and because I think that I knew like a little bit about DJ Moore and I just kind of like always signed it off because I was like, oh well, one, he just signed that contract.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I don't know why did he just miss like the explosion from like the wide receiver contracts to all of a
I
sudden
don't know.
just be
His
on this
contract was
3 years?
a little weird. It was front loaded, so he got like a decent amount of guarantee in the beginning, but it was one of those where I guess like I don't know. It was a weird contract, honestly, because it's one of those where like he wasn't underperforming. I mean, he was 1,100 yards receiving for three straight seasons, and he had well over 1,200 all-purpose yards. So you think like at least, I mean, upper level receiver, so you're thinking maybe close to 20 million a year, if not, 17 a year.
Yeah.
But his deal, the way it comes out to be, is kind of odd. I don't know. To me, it feels like he wanted to get solidified with a deal and have the ability. Because I guess if you really look at it, you're like, okay, maybe a second contract is in the works or in the um, or in the possibility because he's only going to be 28 years old by the time the contract's over. So
Yeah.
maybe he was thinking like long term he'll get another contract, but I don't know. It does seem like a little bit odd.
Danny wants Marty Booker, who I had to Google to figure out who that was.
I remember Marty Booker. That was quite a time. It was like him and oh, what's his name? Started with Bernard Berrien, I think it was too. It was like
Oh, I
Marty
know
Booker and
him.
him, or maybe that was
Oh, wait, was
different
that
time periods.
that was the guy who I think dominated on oh, it was on like there was a mobile NFL app, but it was like before it got super commercialized.
Hmm.
I think it was, I don't know, I think it was like on my iPod Touch. I think you could just basically bomb it to him and he'd catch it every time. I think it was Berrien. Then there was also the guy who was like a defensive back, but also was a wide receiver. He was also insane as well. But
Hmm.
yeah, of course, that part as well. Okay, that's also another good point too. So Montgomery now is still out there
Well,
and
you
still available.
so Montgomery and Miles Sanders are your two top available running backs. I think that what's
Wait,
happening is wait, what?
no, he's dropping news, not just
Is he really?
because Jamal Williams left. No fucking way.
Oh, yep. David Montgomery has reached an agreement with the Lions. That is going to be painful to watch over
Oh,
whatever.
why'd he stay in the division too?
Well, Miles Sanders, here we come.
Wow, wait, why can't I find this anywhere? Oh, there it is.
Dude, it's all over. I literally opened the thing and I'm just seeing, oh, that
Dude,
hurts my
Twitter's
soul.
fucking borked. Completely dropping the swearing. Um, a 3-year deal for 18 million.
God, that is so low. We could have paid that. Oh my God. What are we going to have to give Miles Sanders now? Because that's like, he's going to be in the like the 8 or 9 million, I feel like.
11 million
6 million a
guaranteed,
year,
that's
we
it.
couldn't give him that contract. What are we doing? Are we drafting Bijan Robinson at this point? What's the plan here? That's the only move that I'm questioning.
That's so wildly depressed in value. 11 million only. I'm sure incentives, yada yada yada, but oh, I thought Jamal Williams was already gone. I didn't know. I thought he already signed somewhere. Okay, so but I mean now he's going to be gone, but
Yeah, now he'll be gone.
wow. Wow, that hurts so much more now that he's actually officially signed. I didn't know how I'd feel until like he was actually gone, but that's so much worse than I thought it was going to
Dude,
be.
that hurts my soul to have that. I mean, because I get three. Because the I think what hurts my soul the most is that that's such a ridiculously low number. Like 3 years, 18 million is 100% exactly what I would have wanted to pay him. So the fact that we didn't like, oh, that hurts
DeAndre
me.
Swift
That hurts.
is still there, so he's still got a little bit left on his contract. So
Dude, I would have been willing giving him like 7 or 8 million. I can't believe they gave him six, and he's gonna take that. God, that is frustrating. Okay,
that takes
well,
the wind out of my sails a little bit. That
I
I,
know it
I really
does
want to
because
know why. Did he really want to leave them because like his stats were good? Khalil
dude,
Herbert.
I like this almost kind of scares me a little bit because it makes me feel like maybe they really do think that like they can move forward with Herbert.
Yeah, I
But
don't like that. He's not a guy. First of all, he's absolutely dog shit in pass blocking. So
well,
at
the
least
other
Montgomery
issue,
could jump back there and do that, but he's not the guy who you're running out there like every single snap. Like he's a good chain. He's like a Tariq Cohen,
well, how
really.
many yards? How many yards did Montgomery get that he should have got? I mean, how many yards did we put him out there for like 3rd and 2, and we ended up getting a first down? I mean, like it's just that's why it hurts. Now I'm like, yeah, now you honestly should go out and get either Jamal Williams or like I said, sign Miles Sanders to a similar deal. 3 years, 21 maybe to Miles. I don't know. I'm just that hurts because I'm just like I hope to God they don't actually think that Herbert should be their running back going into next season. He's good, but he's not that good.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of thought like now it feels like there's more pressure to spend more with some guy who wasn't here as opposed to like, you know, just locking in the guy who was already here and resigning. I don't know. I was so back and forth on that. Then you convinced me on like the Saquon. I was like, okay, cool. As long as they got the money. Now I think that'd
Mhm.
be fun. And now that I'm like, okay, well, at least you can always just back up and be like, here, you've been here and been a
Yeah.
model like of what we want like a Chicago Bears to be.
Ah,
Like all of a sudden we can lock you in. And it's not going to be that much. And now that really was all it was.
yeah,
So,
that
and why the line? Like, nobody else was in on him, too? Like, people were saying kind of jokingly, like the Chiefs, but also that kind of would have been nuts, too. Just,
well, running back's hard because if you're like the Chiefs, you got a running back in the 7th round in Pacheco that turned out to be that good. Like you have a
It's just
quarterback, you
true.
have everything there. You don't have to worry about it too much. It's just and that hurts because it's just like Dave Montgomery was for that contract. That's what really pisses me off about this. And it's not even. I think honestly, it's taking the wind out of your sails, like you said, is probably the perfect like the way that I feel because
Because
that
they've been hitting on
contract is.
everything else. Like this one, I kind of thought was like a pick. I don't know, an easy one.
I mean, like my question is that which is what worries me is either they have a plan, aka they want to sign somebody else like a Miles Sanders, maybe they're actually going after him. Or my other worry is that they actually think that they could just draft maybe another running back and try out Herbert as the starter. And if that's the case, I really am not happy with that decision. So that's like one of the only decisions I wouldn't be very happy with. We're just praising them for the freaking trade and everything. And now I'm like a little disappointed. Now, again, I'll give them the
Once
benefit of the
emotions
doubt.
go back down, still
Ugh,
the much more
I know.
important parts are like still hits. This sucks, but like this
Like I
again in
said,
the
it
long
sucks
run.
because the contract is so like is reasonable. 3 years, 16 million or 18 million is literally exactly where I would have been happy to give him a deal and have him on the roster. But whatever. I mean, it's running backs. Running backs are always one of those things where people never value running backs, especially second contracts, because it is dangerous to give them a second contract. It's not really historically been great, but
Yeah.
I don't know, dude like that that's fighting for so many extra yards. And that contract's pretty reasonable. Like I said, I really got to see what they want to do now, like what they're moving forward with, because you can't. Because then, and my other big issue is that like when you have so many holes in your team, people were like, oh, maybe they can cut, Eddie Jackson and save so much money. I'm like, okay, you could save 9 million cutting Eddie Jackson. Who are you going to replace Eddie Jackson for? 9 million worth. That's going to be similar production as Eddie Jackson.
I
And
mean,
like,
if it
if you
was two
can't
years
answer
ago,
that
I'd be
question,
more
then
on
what's the
board. But
point?
like, it's been different in like the last year, especially. Like he was playing out of his mind.
Yeah. So it's just one of those where I just go like letting Montgomery go to another team for a reasonable contract means that you now have another hole. So now what are you going to do to fill that hole? And if you think that it's just going to be Herbert and then plug in some rookie running back, I really do not think that that's going to be like as, potentially like I'm not going to be confident in that move if that's going to be the case. So
Yeah.
I
Oof.
don't know. That kind of hurts. But the other things we'll get to is the actual signings that the Bears have actually made. Which you go off right off the bat. TJ Edwards, that contract absurdly low. I did not expect it to be that low. Like Bobby Okereke's contract is where I thought that he would be, TJ Edwards. I thought it would be like 10 million a year, 3, 4 years. But the fact that we got him for as low as we did is insane.
I now judge free agency signings on how mad other teams fans are, and the
Mhm.
Eagles fans were super pissed off about him leaving for that little. So that tells me I feel pretty good about that. So
Yeah, yeah, it's like not only that little, but it's like kind of almost a 2 year contract. Like the third year, I think there's not a lot of dead space or anything you can have in it. So it's one of those where now the question is that then you go, well, we'll address that. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. The second signing that they made to go right into that is the Nate Davis signing, which is funny because he was on my list of guards. Ben Powers was the guy that I actually wanted the most because I thought he was better than Nate Davis. But I'm still happy with Nate Davis. Nate Davis has been an ascending player, which you'll hear that word or term a lot to describe players that the Bears are trying to go after. Is those ascending players where they think like, like the Walker signing. That's an ascending player. Like he 2 years ago had like 2 sacks. Last year had seven. Has been improving every year, and you're basically gambling on the fact, which not a big deal that Walker got, but you're basically gambling on the fact that he's an ascending player and he's going to continue to do well. So the um, the Nate Davis signing is honestly the only thing with the Nate Davis signing is now you have three starting caliber guards that need to start, like that all have money towards them that are starting level money. So now the question is what's going to happen? Is it going to be a Cody Whitehair cut? Is it going to be we're just going to bring all three guards into the season and see who gets the starting roles? Are we playing for injury concern? Like I'm kind of like not confused, but I'm kind of interested to see how that plays out.
I'd be surprised, and I have to look at Whitehair's contract and like kind of review at least what he like looked like. I know he didn't play that well, but I'd be surprised if like as a last ditch effort to shake things up since Mustafer's like 100% gone, that they
Mhm.
weren't gonna resort back to like their constant flipping him out from guard into center, guard to center, and they say like, look, you're gonna be at center. We're bringing in extra guards. And we're having people. I mean, like there's some merit to like bringing in a bunch of like vet men or like younger guys or whatever, and then just like seeing how it
Mhm.
works out. I just like if you cut him, we're not trying to save cap space this year. I'm pretty sure his deal isn't that much longer. So like you have to think that you're going to be able to bring someone in for that lost cap plus somebody else. Obviously because you're getting rid of opening up the roster spot, but I don't know if they're going into that and they're going to be like, let's start with getting rid of him. I don't know how I feel about that. They're already thin enough. He's not the worst player in the NFL.
Mhm.
It's tough. I don't envy that position at all. So,
I So here's the thing is I am okay with having you have the money, so it's not going to hurt you to like carry an extra guard that's starting level on your roster. I am just curious to see what that plan is because I do think that it could be one of those where they go, we're going to have them all compete. We're not sure about Tevin's back, so let's see how that all goes.
hmm,
I could totally see that being the case because they don't want to be pigeonholed again where, Tevin was having injuries, Cody Whitehair was out for a short period of time. I get it. You have the money. You might as well see how that goes. But I am curious if that does mean that maybe if they need the money down the road, because then maybe they're making some kind of big splash signing again on a player, which I can talk about shortly here in a minute. Um, then you would cut, Whitehair to get that money because you'd save like 7 or 8 million, I think, at least. So it's possible, but I do like the Nate Davis signing. I think he's an ascending player, 26 years old. So, he's young enough that you're not getting him on like, towards the back end of his career or something. So it's a good signing. And then the massive signing, which I was shocked by because I mean I have my list that I sent you of players that I would want. I did
hmm,
not mention him on that list because I honestly thought we were not in the works for him. Like I thought he was out of our money range,
yeah, right.
which is obviously we're mentioning the signing of Tremaine Edmonds, who is 24 years old, one of the best middle linebackers in the game, 6'5", 250, could run a 4.5, just an insanely talented like linebacker. Especially right after you make that deal to T.J. Edwards earlier in the day, it's wild to me. And then you have um, Sanborn on your roster already, who was showing promise at those positions. Now I have heard some talk about like what the positions they're going to play because that's the really interesting part. So for me, my opinion of it after I've been looking at it is I think T.J. Edwards is your Mike, so he's your middle linebacker because obviously I don't. You're probably familiar at least a bit with the terminology and everything. So in a traditional 4-3, you have three linebackers. If you're running the base defense, you have the Mike, which is your middle linebacker, which is an important part of that team because he's playing a lot of coverage, things like that, dropping back, a lot of cover two. And then you have your will linebacker, who's one of the most important backers on the team because that one is kind of a free range spot where they're able to kind of affect plays and kind of do like they have roles, important things they're supposed to be doing each play, but they have a lot more freedom to attack because they don't get blocked as much. Because the Sam linebacker, who's the other one, which is the weak side backer, usually gets blocked more so, or takes on more blockers. Now, if you're running a nickel defense, which you're taking one of those linebackers off the field to replace him with a corner, you're going to replace him. They're going to replace the Sam linebacker. So what if you actually? There was a quote that I heard from um, Eberflus, which actually makes a lot of sense now if you look at the roster. Is that the ideally he said the Sam linebacker should be a guy that can back up both the Mike and the Will and be able to participate on special teams as well as come in when needed. Which I don't know how much more I can describe Sanborn than saying what I just said, because that's 100% what he is he's going to be able to back up both the Will and Mike. He's going to be able to come in as the Sam needed on base defenses or when you're playing heavy or you're loading the box, whatever it may be. And then he's also going to be able to contribute vastly on special teams. So it's one of those where there's a lot of just, you know, there that basically allows you to have your three linebackers, ready to go. So, in my opinion, I think TJ Edwards plays the Mike. I think that ultimately Tremaine Evans ends up at the Will, and then you have Sanborn at the Sam.
Okay. Yeah. Hold on. I'm going to transition really quickly. Just had to do
Mhm.
something. Something just caught the corner of my eye. 1 second. You
You
could
want me to
talk to
talk then?
you could talk to Danny about actually something I wanted to come back to. That was Mark Ingram
No,
or Derrick Henry. I
go
was
Derek.
talking about how the ninth overall pick had to have been a joke, or else I'm to be upset. But we'll get back to that.
All right. Well, to continue kind of going on my rant, and then I'll address the whole running back. What are we gonna do there? So, anyways, yeah, I do think that Tremaine Edmonds, looking at his film, I know the criticisms with him, or what the criticisms are, is that he doesn't deal with a lot of the traffic in the middle of the field when there's a lot of pulling guards, things like that. He doesn't deal with the traffic a lot and find the running back as well as you would hope out of your Mike linebacker, and maybe that's one of his weaknesses. But the thing about him though is that he's a great coverage backer, and he's obviously got the speed, size, and athleticism to kind of fly around the field and be kind of disruptive just in general. So as far as he goes as the Will, or why I think he would be great for the Will, because I think he would have a lot more like ability to play to his strengths as far as coverage skills, athleticism, flying around the field at the Will position, because he wouldn't have to deal with as much traffic in the middle of the field. Now, of course, you know, a lot of people will say that you want him to be the Mike because he has those coverage skills and he has the length, of somebody who could potentially, drop back into coverage and kind of clog up that middle of the field with his, reach and everything. But in my opinion, I think it's honestly one of those where he's better to be the I think it's honestly better that he is the Will in this kind of setup because he'll have that free range motion. And I think TJ Edwards, honestly, his size, athleticism fits better as a guy who would be able to slide in at the bike, command the offense, run plays. And then when you move into that nickel where you're again only having two linebackers, you can then obviously have TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds kind of almost playing like two Mikes in that situation where they could both draw back into coverage and easily be, one of those, just unbelievable, probably best linebacker tandem in the league at times. So I'm really happy with those picks because I think then Sanborn is a perfect player to. He's young, he'll learn, he'll back up both of them. Maybe even eventually be able to take over for a guy like TJ Edwards when his contract's up or something like that. So I think it's just honestly an overall great two signings. Now, I do know that they need to address the defensive line, and there's been a lot of defensive linemen that are flying off the board signing wise. Hargrave hurt, Jones. Jermont Jones hurt the most because that was a guy I thought was reasonably affordable that you could get there, and he could slide into your three tech. So now I'm really kind of curious as to what their plan is for that, because they basically need four starting offensive linemen on the defense, or four starting defensive linemen, because Justin Jones from last year is probably the only guy that should get significant time. Everybody else can probably needs benefit from subbing in or being backups. So it's kind of one of those where I'm curious to see what they'll address there. But as far as the linebackers go and those signings, I think all of those signings, the Walker signing even is low key, kind of a reasonable because he played defensive end, defensive tackle. So you have a guy again who's going to step in and play really great rotational minutes. So ultimately, their first four signings have been great. So that's kind of my little rant on it. What do you think of their signings so far?
So I can't believe that they were able to sign TJ Edwards for that little, from what I've heard about him and what I did brief research on, which also like I know when he like came on 670 the score or whatever, and did the whole spiel about he's from Chicago. As soon as they pick up the phone, you want to sign all that stuff. But like I was trying to think in my head, like, does that really did that really change his market that much? Because he was one of the first people like off the board, and it was like for a super reasonable contract. And I think he was undrafted. So they kept on bringing in people to like try and hopefully play over him or like play better. And he still, they kept on showing out. Obviously, the Eagles were kind of good on defense last year
Mhm.
and even before that. But I just couldn't get through my head because you feel like a lot of the people on the first day signed like monster contracts. And like if he held out a little bit and was looking around the league, I thought he could have gotten more. But that goes without saying because I'm talking about how little he signed for. Yeah, I mean it sounds really cool that obviously if they have like depth at linebacker and they're gonna have Tremaine Edwards as well. Obviously they might be playing different positions, but like the really popular take out of the gate was like, oh, why didn't you just sign like Roquan and like all that? Well, like I'm sure you already know as well, they got a second round pick out of it. They
Mhm.
also, he didn't want to be here. Obviously, that's kind of like the biggest one. That's not really going to happen. And they still were able to replace him with, I think after all the totals were made, they were able to get Tremaine Edwards and him, I think,
Yeah, for
or
like
and TJ
24 and a
Edwards.
half million.
Yeah, which I think is like closer to what he wanted for one person. So they have two linebackers that are pretty decent and pretty good. So I think it worked out for the best. I just didn't think like again like you I didn't think Tremaine Edmonds was even going to be like in the conversation for the Bears at all.
Mhm.
So I'm just like shocked that he actually came here. But his contract's super reasonable. Like everything else that they try to do, it's front loaded. Um, so I guess just like in his point of view, did we give him the most money and that's where he wanted to go to? Obviously the Bills couldn't retain him because they've got a little bit more of a cap crunch. But
Yeah.
I'm just surprised. That's not what I thought I was going to see. I thought they were going to show out for like a lineman or like after DJ Moore was already acquired. It was kind of like, okay, well they're not buying a wide receiver day one. I thought they were going to end up trying to pay a defensive tackle first because every time I bring it up, they like need more meat on the line. And I think what's so funny
Yes.
about it is that the way that they like kind of filled it out and like tried to address the defense, at least up until now, on Tuesday, only just after free agency stuff is getting started, they were like, okay, so backfield, pretty solid, honestly. Like younger, you just hope ascending. Everyone hopes younger players get better. Not always the
Yeah.
case. But Eddie Jackson, Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker, and Jalen Johnson, all pretty good in the backfield. Then they were like, if Poles could only read left to right or like from front to back, then they were just like, oh, okay, you know what? So we're gonna address this, and now, okay, second level of the defense. Now we're just gonna fill that part out. But like literally nobody on the line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Like the guy from the Titans and stuff is coming over. That's good
He's a
because
rotational player.
yeah, that's good, but that's fine because the Al, I forgot his name. Al, I'm not even trying to
Aquadin
butcher it.
Muhammad was supposed to be that.
He was supposed to be that, and he was literally, I think, by all statistical analysis, like the worst defensive end, if not defensive player in the league. So,
Yep.
like, if you go from the worst to like, oh, he's kind of, this guy's got 7 sacks last year. He seemed like he was pretty decent. That's such like a
Yeah.
dramatic from 0 to like 6
And
is still
flexibility
huge.
because he played defensive end and three tech and pretty reasonably equal. So it's kind of one of those where you can slot him in. By the way, just real quick to slot this in because this is a little more confusing on the whole running back situation. The Chicago Bears have signed Seattle running back Travis Homer to a 2-year, $4.5 million contract. So basically a backup running back that we just
So
signed.
that's where their head's at. Okay.
So
Now,
I'm
why
with
does he
that. I'm kind
specify
of
as a
almost
backup
like,
running back?
but it's a like so that's a weird signing because I'm like, are they like they're not expecting him to really play significant minutes, are they? Because like if that's the case, then they're definitely rolling with Herbert as their starter.
Are they think? I mean, they've got Kari Blasting game, so like that's already they're talking about. They've got the guy, run blocking. He's not
Yeah.
that. I don't know much about Travis Homer. Is he a
Well,
big
he had
guy?
like 400. I mean, in 4 years, they had the stat line. In 4 years, he's had 465 rushing yards and like 400 receiving yards. So he's been like, kind of a pretty, he's okay when you throw him in there. But it's a weird signing because it's like, yeah, I mean, it's like, are they actually targeting like Miles Sanders? Or are they just because the other thing too that I saw pop up in the feed was that the Eagles went out and signed a running back in Penny
Yeah, how
who
about
could be
that?
a starter or a decent starter for them. So I feel like they are probably not going to go after Miles Sanders or bring him back. So now he's really available. And with Montgomery getting that contract, I could see them going after Sanders and getting him for a reasonable contract. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like what's happening though, unfortunately, is that they're rolling with him and or Herbert and Homer, and I don't feel good about that. Like that's I feel like that running back room just got worse, and we're a team that doesn't need to get worse. Like,
So again, going off of just other teams' fans, of course, the Seahawks commenter is talking about he's a good pass protector, he's a good pass protector, he's a good pass protector, and he's a third down
mhm.
back. That's good to hear. Okay, that kind
I
of makes
mean,
it a little bit.
yeah, those are things that we need, and if that's the case, that's good. But it's one of those where I just don't. Again, I still just don't feel like Herbert and Homer are two guys that I'm like, ecstatic about.
Oh, I know. No, I'm not. Where am I at with it? I'm not ecstatic about it, but at the same time, they were like a ridiculous, and again, always a little star at the corner for context, but
Mhm.
um, yeah, they were like seriously a ridiculous rushing offense. So they could take like a tiny little bit of a hit in like rushing and then be able to make up with it, hopefully with like a completely revamped passing game, of course, in the best case
Yeah, I
scenario.
guess
But
that's where their heads at.
yeah, and I mean, okay, I get it now. If he's pass protector, that's great. So they could do that. They get Kari blasting game for running, and then Herbert. Again, still, I now that makes me more like that they're definitely going to get like some grinder, either like a low
Mhm.
round pick or something else, because I feel like that's still
I
incomplete.
Yeah, I think that they're gonna because you're not going in there with Tristan Ebner as your third and being like, I'm good with that. Like
Danny
I
said,
feel
yeah,
like
don't we have
they
Ebner?
have to go and get one more.
Yeah, yeah. So that's interesting. Okay, that's starting to take like a little bit
Yeah, I don't
more
know. I have to
shape.
see where their heads at. If they don't make any more signings, they're not going to draft one until late rounds. So if there's no more signings with running back, then that's what they're doing. Is they're basically rolling with Herbert as their starter, plug in Homer and some guy that they draft, and hopefully that is equivalent. And we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't feel the most comfortable with that, but I can't knock it. Now, another thing too that I saw, by the way, which were again just some reactions live, is that Byron Murphy, who's the other cornerback, Jamal Dean came off the board. Byron Murphy is apparently making a deal with the Vikings, and I'm not like that was another corner that I would have been happy for us to sign because he was only 25 years old. He's been a pretty good zone coverage kind of corner, which we would like to use a lot in this defense. So I felt like he would be a good fit, but you know, I don't know because we need one more corner. You can't because you need a third corner, and what we were trying out last year wasn't terrible, but you need a quality like a starter level corner to slide in there because you can't keep having where um
Some guy
whatever
goes
what's
down or
his
Kyler
name,
Gordon gets blown up.
yeah, or Kyler Gordon's trying to play two positions and it's bouncing back in between the two, and he's a rookie and he's having trouble, and so I don't know.
Yeah.
I so overall though, to talk about now that we've talked about what the Bears did do and what's happening currently live, what we're seeing, I do want to say that my wish list, although a lot of the names are off the list, there are some names that I still want to talk about, and I'm actually kind of curious. The Bears have been quiet, and there is still a big name tackle that's available, and I'm really kind of curious if there is going to be some level like I feel like with the Tremaine Edmonds deal that and they were quiet for a bit because I literally texted you and was like Bears were quiet or Bears are being quiet, and then
Okay, it was
all
the
of a sudden
first
they
10
announced,
minutes though.
huh?
It was the first 10 minutes of the tampering period being open.
No, it was a couple hours in that I texted you because it was
Okay,
after TJ Edwards got signed, and then it was like they're
you're
being
right.
kind of quiet, and then all of a sudden they announced Tremaine Edmonds signing. So I feel like it could be one of those where they might not be spending because they're loading up for one more big get. Now, the big get would be Orlando Brown, is who we're talking about.
But where is
I
he
don't
at?
know how much,
Is he at
huh?
left tackle or they try and stick him at right tackle? I've heard that
I
too.
think he would be a left tackle. He's going to be a left tackle, I think, no matter what. I just don't know how much money he's going to get. The fact that he hasn't been signed right now is good for us because that means that his hopefully his value is being driven down a little bit. But I do think that in that case they would move Braxton Jones over to right tackle no matter what if they signed him. Because Orlando Brown would want to play like we would want to play left tackle. He wants to get paid like a left tackle. He's going to play left tackle. Uh, I would be fine with it now at this point because like the only other option is that you go and draft like Peter Skoronsky. But the problem is, which is where I'm slowly becoming afraid of, is our pass rush is going to be so non-existent still that like we have to do something at some point. Like
You read my notes for today.
that's like part of the thing that I'm scared about with that is that I like I just because the problem is that we have, you sign Walker, you have Jones. Those are two guys that I feel good about being rotational players, but you don't have starting defensive ends, like quality starting defensive ends, and then you don't have like that big name on the defensive tackle position in the three tech position that you could be happy with moving forward. Now, the only things I could see are like players that are available still is like Marcus Davenport is available. He's 26 years old. Didn't play super well last year, but he's been pretty talented. He's lengthy. He could slot in basically at the left end position, which is a little bit more of like a run stopping position in this defense. And then your pure pass rusher that you would have to get for your right end is I would love to see a guy like Lucas Van Ness. From Iowa slotting in there at right end because he's young. He's got a lot of potential. He's kind of raw, and I feel like with a defensive coach like Matt Eberflus and who they have in position, I feel like they could coach him up and he could slot in there really well. And then I would love like oh God, I cannot say his name. Tom Wareaway or whatever his name from Northwestern. I could see him slotting in as a defensive end slash three tech as well in this defense. So like I would be happy with them being our first round pick and our second round pick. Um, and then, then you can kind of address after that some other, needs as far as like maybe a corner at the end of the second round or something like
You're
that.
saying this if they sign Orlando Brown, right? Because I know
Yes.
also the really popular is like the two tackles, the one local guy at 9.
Skaronski. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think there's another one, not local,
Well,
but he's
there's
also
Paris Campbell Jr., who's the left tackle. There's Peter Skoronsky, who's left tackle, but a lot of people think he could play guard or he should be a guard, but I think he could play tackle. Slot him in at right tackle, you'd be happy. And
okay.
then there is the guy from Georgia, Broderick Jones, who's a right tackle. He's the other big name. There is a guy from Oklahoma that's starting to Anton Harrison, I think, or something like that. He's starting to get a lot of talk. And then Wright, I think is his name from Tennessee at right tackle. He's also starting to get a lot of talk. And then Cody Mouch. Wow, I'm just butchering names right now.
Close enough.
Um, he is from North Dakota State. Could be a guy that you could slot in at right tackle, and he might be available in the second round. So there's guys like that that you could get in the second round if you address like Lucas Van Ness in the first round or something like that. Now, of course, a lot of people are also talking about how Jalen Carter might fall to them, and maybe at 9 that's a lot more reasonable than 4 or 1. Where we would have potentially taken him beforehand. I don't know how I feel about that. I have to see how everything plays out with the legals first before I go anywhere near him at 9.
Yeah.
So, but the problem is that you have offensive line and you have defensive line, which are big spots that you have to address. And if you do not address defensive line at all, then you have to draft some kind of pass rusher early in the first 2 rounds. But then that means that you will not have that ability to draft guys like a center or a right tackle or a corner that you need as well. So you kind of begin to strangle your ability to actually address the holes that you have without being able to, you know, like draft the guys you want, that are valuable. So I am kind of reaching a point with like Mike McGlinchey. I'm kind of glad we dodged that bullet because that contract was
He got
absurd. I mean, that was
absolutely
a
paid.
large contract for a dude that's not as good as that contract is.
I mean, which makes sense. Like I mean, they're so, if there's a word beyond like so far all in, they're so much further all in. Like on the Broncos, like they already
Yeah,
got
of
Russell
course.
Wilson. They of course got that Walmart great value wallet out and then signed Sean Payton. So now they're like, I mean, they have to like
They got Zach
salvage it.
Allen.
Yeah, I mean, in their eyes, their window's open and their window's open immediately, and they already
Yeah,
lost a
they
year
only have
going
like
towards it.
2, 3 years left.
Yeah, so I mean, like, those are the guys who get paid. That's why every single time in free agency, the most frustrating part of it is like, oh my God, this guy's so overpaid. This guy's so overpaid. And it's like, yeah, but that's like, those are the people who get to free agency. Those are the people to get out there. If there's one team that's like that desperate and wants to like pay them to make sure they come there, then that's the price. That's what they pay for it. But I'm glad
Yeah.
it's not us. I'm on the same boat with my extremely limited as a puddle depth of research. I was like, this feels like something that the Bears would have done in 2015, and that's what made
Yeah.
me feel bad about it.
Yeah, like if
Overpay.
Mike McGlinchey would have gotten a contract. So, like, here's the thing. Here's where I'm at. Mike McGlinchey's contract, absurd for the amount that he got. We should not have paid that. He should be paid like 5 or 6 million less a year, and then I would be happy with the contract.
Yep.
Now, the opposite side of that, where I'm a little bit like, a little upset, is Caleb McGarry's contract
Mm.
is very affordable for a guy that is, I think, similar quality of Mike McGlinchey, but got way less. So, Jawan Taylor, I get, the Chiefs, of course, are the Chiefs. And so they're obviously more enticing because you want to go play with, Mahomes and the way that I mean, they literally just won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, like, I get it. And he's young. So, of course, the money he got is sounds absurd, but he's young. He's talented. He's awesome. He's an ascending player again. But Caleb McGarry was where I'm kind of like, again, a little bit like, ooh, we could have paid that. And that's a reasonable contract for a guy. So, I'm happy that they stuck to their guns on the Mike McGlinchey thing, but I don't like that they didn't go after Caleb McGarry. Now, the only thing is Mike McGlinchey apparently was their guy. I mean, they were trying to go after him when free agency rolled around and started. So it could be one of those where now they're at the Northwestern, pro day today, and they were there, watching Peter Skoronski, who could be your starting right tackle. But again, my thing goes is I'm fine with drafting Peter Skoronski for your right tackle and not addressing, it with Orlando Brown. But then you have to spend that money on like Marcus Davenport and potentially Yannick Ngakwe or something. Because like the second round guy that you're going to get at pass rush is not going to be like, he can't be your only guy that you're addressing the defensive line with. Like, because Peter Skoronski's your
Yeah.
draft pick at 9 and you don't trade out of that spot, then yeah, the next spot you're at is 53, which you're going to get, you know, kind of the back end of those top 2 round, pass rushers. And so then you can't really expect that that's going to be your primary pass rush, going into the next year. So
Yeah.
if they don't go after Orlando Brown, then I think you have to go after guys like I said, Marcus Davenport, Yannick Ngakwe, because you have to be able to address that. Now, some other names that I want them
Before you
to
go off of
address
Caleb
is
McGarry,
Garrett.
I was trying to
Oh,
find this on the side, but apparently, one of the tweets I saw when he officially was like announced as being re-signed by the Falcons is that they
mhm,
said like there was another team that he was almost going to go to, but he ended up staying like staying in his old home team of the Falcons. And I
yeah,
was like, I wonder who that was,
yeah, it could be us.
because that. I didn't know too much, but apparently one of the best right tackles in football. To be able to get that at that price would be too good to be true. So of course,
Well, he's a really good, he's a very, very good run blocking right tackle, but not as good pass blocking. But the
okay,
thing with him is if your left tackle is a good pass blocker, then you kind like the way you want it to be ideally is your left tackle is a good pass blocker and a pretty good run blocker. And then you want your right tackle to be like, a great run blocker. So he would have been a great run blocker and a guy you want at right tackle. But then the thought process is you're still having a young growing player in Braxton Jones, and maybe he's not there yet to fully rely on him in the pass protection. So now you're thinking that maybe you need a little bit of a better pass protector on the right side.
yeah.
Now,
So,
again, that could factor into why they would want Peter Skronsky, but I also could see them going for Orlando Brown and then moving Braxton Jones over to right tackle. I don't know. There's things that needs to be done, and they have the money to do it.
yeah.
Do I think they need to break the bank? No. But I think if they went after, you know, like if they went and signed Marcus Davenport and then went on and signed, you know, I don't know, maybe another, guy that could slot in at you know, as like a rotational player at defensive end. I think I would be fine with them then going after Peter Skronsky and having him solidified at right tackle, because maybe you're going, okay, we got Marcus Davenport, he's our left end. We kind of still don't really know who our right end's going to be. We don't really have a 3 tech, but we do have good rotational players at all of those positions. Maybe you roll into next season with that. and you're fine with that because you know that then the next season Justin Fields makes that leap that you want to see. Then maybe the next season you go, okay, now we're one of those teams that's all in. Let's go get our pass rusher, and then you go and pay somebody, or you draft somebody high because you have 2 first round picks. That could be the possibility, but something needs to be done. There needs to be one more signing on the offensive line or defensive line in order to kind of show what they're going to do with the ninth pick.
Yeah, no, I was thinking on the top of my head when you were describing it, because I'll give you a brief synopsis of what I was always didn't understand, which was how could somebody be, and like I'll draw this one out a little bit. How could someone be a good run blocker but not a good pass blocker? And then in my head I was going through, okay, now I understand a little bit more. This was more of my opinion, like 2016, didn't really
Yeah,
get it. Okay, so now going across that, thinking like, okay, so it seems to me, off of first ideas and trying to think about it, that if you're a good run blocker, run blocking is generally associated with strength, and then pass protection is generally associated with technique. Is it always or more often the case, you think, if you're watching people, that you could have a guy who's like really strong, and I'm immediately thinking of the left tackle for the 49ers, which evades me at the top of my head,
Brent
but
Williams.
yeah, is it simply is it simply that always like that's always the case, that pass protection is generally technique and can be trained, and then basically like run blocking is just like physical strength and muscle?
It's it's kind of so pass blocking is mostly footwork and hand placement and keeping your body square to the pass rush and being able to do that all together at the same time. That's difficult for a lot of people because in run blocking, you can use your size a lot easier because you're not like pass blocking, you're doing a lot of catching. And when you catch the pass rusher, you have to be able to get your hands on him first. You're trying to beat him to getting your hands on him first, then versus the opposite. You also need to keep your footwork square while going into your pass set, where you're kind of dropping back. If you're on the right side, your right foot needs to drop back. Left side, left foot needs to drop back. When you're doing that, you have to keep your feet underneath you. You have to stay square. You have to get your hands on the guy first, but you also need a level of size in that because you could just get bull rushed by a defensive end that's stronger than you. So you kind of have to have a combination of both, but it is more so on the heavier side of footwork, balance, and handwork.
Okay.
Once you get that down, then pass blocking becomes a lot easier because even if a guy overpowers you size wise, you can still at least keep him in front of you or at least do something to divert his, strength. Like you'll see guys, a guy cuts in, a good pass protector will be able to adjust, throw him to the guard, or just even drive him, in the direction he's going. And then you see the quarterback step back. Vice versa, if the guy's pass rushing to the outside, you can kind of direct his attention that way if you have your balance and handwork and stuff underneath you, and then your quarterback steps up in the pocket and makes the throw. So, and that's why left tackles you want to be a lot better pass protectors because they're blocking his blind side. So you want them to be able to deal with that versus the right tackle because the right tackle, if he screws up, the quarterback usually can see that occur or at least has an eye on that in some way. So that way he could step up, step back, scramble, get out of there, do whatever's needed. So your right tackle, you care more about being good in the run protection, at least.
Yeah,
So
and then
that's
if you're
kind of the
Sam
difference.
Mustafa, you just put up the little red flag and you let them run past you for the most part.
Well, he improved a lot. I was not a fan of Mustafa in the beginning, but he has improved a lot. Now, the thing with guards, why it's easier to play guard is because you're not doing the pass setting. You have a guy to your right, you have a guy to your left. It's a lot easier. You're doing a lot more like I'm trying to think of what the word like directing traffic kind of thing. Like being a guard, you can still use your size, you can still use your athleticism that you maybe had as a right tackle in the form of Tevin Jenkins, but you don't have to you don't have to go through pass set, you don't have to be you have the balance and everything. And sometimes defensive ends, you're on an island with that defensive end as a tackle. And whereas as a guard, you get help from your center or you'll get help from your tackle on the other side or you'll be able to provide help in both ways or just being able to see to pick up a blitzer. That's kind of your job as a guard. So guys like Peter Skoronsky, his arm length is not as is an issue, and that's why people are saying that he should be better as a guard, which he would be better as a guard because he's got the pass protection, he's got the run protection skills. He just is lacking in arm length, which is something that is important because that's part of the hand working and getting your arms on the other guy that you would see in pass protection as a right or left tackle. So with the way that like Caleb McGarry, for instance, better run blocker than he is pass blocker, but he plays right tackle, so that's fine. You
Okay.
know, guy like Orlando Brown hasn't been great at either right pass protection or run blocking, but he's been pretty solid at both. So he should get paid like a pretty good left tackle, but the problem is that he wants money that's top 10 left tackle, top 5 left tackle.
Yeah, which is why the Chiefs kicked him to the curb and still were able to replace him with somebody crazy. But of course, again, we're not surprised. But I mean, I think that there is still something that's going to be looming. I feel like they're also going to feed a lot on a lot on like the day 5, 6, whatever, like some like the second wave, I guess, of like free agents because they have a lot of course, they have a lot of depth to fill out. But of course, being super hopeful, optimistic that they're going to try and like go after, linemen for the most part, either in the
Mm.
draft or also just guys hopefully that get cast off to the side. I mean, like the prototypical like defensive tackle that I think for our scheme even. And I mean, just like in general, of course, like somebody like Vita Vea, but there's only like one or two of them. So, not going to get my hopes up exactly. That's just been the thing that I've been waiting for the entire time. Is like they literally just need meat still in the front of the line that's there. So it'll be
Well,
interesting to see.
I'll tell you what, one of the things I would do if I was the Bears is I would call the Buccaneers and see if Ryan Jensen's available. Because that's a guy who's a little older, they're cap strapped, and they kind of look like they're a team that might try to start rebuilding because they don't really
Hmm.
have, a lot of their players are older or expensive. Mike Evans was a guy that I would have asked for before we got DJ Moore. Now I would call and see what their opinion is of Ryan Jensen because he's older, but I mean, you plug Ryan Jensen into this. Like, if we didn't do anything at offensive line and we plugged in Ryan Jensen, I would immediately be like, okay, this offensive line is significantly better.
Yeah, that'll man, that I didn't even think about that. That's too they Buccaneers are such a weird team right now and they're in a weird spot because they are like were built to win. Obviously didn't really happen and everybody got old and stuff, but like there's a
Mm.
bunch of premium players there that are just like sitting there right now.
Yeah, they have a lot of players that they could capitalize on, getting things back for them if they act right now. But I almost feel like they could also be one of those teams that thinks that they could try to continue to stay competitive like the Bears did for years and end up being just like the Bears, where you lose assets for less than you got them for, or you don't even recoup reasonable, for them because you held on them too long.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's one of those where they're an interesting team because I could see them just being like, we could compete and then keep everybody, but I would still put in the call and be like, what's your, what does Ryan Jensen look like? Can we get him for like a fourth, or something like that?
Yeah. So what did you
Um,
think of this like the cornerbacks moving around? Like Jalen Ramsey to the Dolphins and Stephon Gilmore to the Cowboys for a
so
fifth.
Stephon Gilmore is older. He's still very talented, still very good, corner, but he's up for a contract next year. He'll need another extension. So it's one of those where maybe the Colts just weren't ready to pay him. Maybe the Colts are clearing cap space for a certain quarterback that's available that's still not, been paid. I don't know. Colts, it kind
Like
of feels like that either they're fine with sitting at 4 because they think that they're going to get one of the top 4 quarterbacks and they're okay with that because any of them are fine, or they could be clearing house because they want to, make that trade for a quarterback that's available that would immediately make them a great team. So I don't know. I
hmm,
could see them just being like, he's getting older, he's on the decline of his career. We don't want to extend him, so let's get something in return now. So that's kind of how I feel about that deal. Now the Jalen Ramsey thing is very clearly like the Rams have said that they're almost kind of in like a fire sale where like everybody's available and they're rebuilding all of a sudden, and
which is weird
he
because
wants more
Stafford said he was
money and an
coming back.
extension. Huh?
Which is weird because Stafford said he was coming back. So like why would he want to come back
Yeah,
and play for like this half dead team.
That's what's going to happen. I mean, Sean McVay almost retired, or whatever, or almost stepped away from football, and Aaron Donald's on the verge of retiring, and Stafford's, not in the better years of his career. And, you have Jalen Ramsey now being traded. You've lost a lot of players, retired, players retiring. The Rams are a team that need to start a fire sale and trade everybody. Otherwise, they're going to be a really just mediocre team for the next, 2, 3 years, and then be screwed when everybody leaves.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that deal was Jalen Ramsey doesn't like to be on a losing team. So that's of course what's happening there. He wanted more money and an extension on his current contract, and they weren't probably willing to give it to him. And so they just said, let's cut ties now before this ends up being what Jacksonville looked like at the end. So,
Yeah, it's yeah, the Dolphins really just like bought some of the premium players like on their team. Like Xavier
mhm.
Howard obviously was a trade, think a trade, then Bradley Chubb, and then Jalen Ramsey.
Well, and here's where the excitement comes in to be a Bears fan, because what they did was they made the trade for with Larry Tunsil, and in doing that trade got picks, and then they also made the trade to what, the 49ers, right? And in doing so, ended up with the picks that led them to be able to get Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, you know, who you just what's his name, from
Bradley
Bradley
Chubb.
Chubb, and
Yeah.
now have been able to get Jalen Ramsey. So that's what's exciting about the Bears and what they did with the first overall pick, and what they could do with the ninth pick too, making another trade back, depending on if a Will Levis falls or something and somebody wants him.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
So
another thought too. Yeah, and then like you were also talking about somebody they're trying to get rid of somebody before like things start to fall off or in any case. Like I
mm,
couldn't figure out what. Okay, props to the Raiders for getting Jimmy G at like a super ridiculously low contract that I was really surprised about.
yeah,
But then
and
at the
for
same
really like a
time,
year or two.
yeah, but at the same time also shipping out Waller to the Giants just tells me that he's either like more injured or like something's up with him because like that's such a weird move to at the same time bringing your quarterback be like, yeah, that was pretty good. Like Hunter Renfro, Devontae Adams, Waller, this is cool. He's coming in a good position, and also just be like, oh yeah, and we're just gonna like ship you off. Like they're not cap crunched, and even if they are, they don't have, like I do they have more moves that they still want to make and they still want to change things around. But like, what a
Maybe that's
strange
what it
thing to
is,
do.
or maybe they thought that he was a descending player and that they needed to get something in return for him, or maybe I don't know. I don't know. That does seem like a weird decision to make immediately after getting Jimmy G, and being in position to draft, like a guy like Richardson, and have him sit behind Jimmy G. So I don't know. It's a weird choice.
Yeah, I just that one really just came out of nowhere. I was like, I mean, he's probably gonna do pretty good in that offense because they barely have anybody to throw to. So at the very least, like he'll get targets and everything. But like, it's just such a weird thing to at the same time be like, okay, buy quarterback and then also sell things we're supporting him with. But like, what is up with that like with his contract? Like I know he gets injured and everything, and that's
Hmm.
part of it, and it's kind of like built around the contract. But still, like he must have really wanted to go there and work with him. I like with McDaniels or whatever, but like that really surprised me. I thought he was at least gonna make bank on being like one of the good quarterbacks that was like available since Carr is already off the table. Obviously Rodgers is still floating around and they don't know what they're gonna do, but like
Yeah, but
that
I
that
think
was
it's
weird.
part of it's like it's a prove it deal. Like, okay, you stay healthy and play well for a whole season, and then we'll see where that goes. Like, I think this is one of those deals where you could see them, if he plays well and he ends up like in the Pro Bowl or something like that, you could see them throwing on like a 3 year, $120 million extension, where you're like, oh my God, like all of a sudden he's getting 38 million a year,
The hell is he
for
gonna
the
be
next four
then?
or 5 years.
You know? Like in 3 years or whatever, if he's coming around to that. He's Jimmy G's sitting right at 31 already. So he's gonna be
Yeah,
coming around 34ish, I guess. I guess that's
that's what I mean. I mean, this basically is a 2 year deal. So it's one of those where like I said, I could easily see them, if he does well this year, and then he starts playing well next year. I could see them all of a sudden mid next year it being announced. Jimmy G reaches a 3 year, $105 million extension, where all of a sudden he's making 38 million a year for the next 3, 4 years with the Raiders.
yeah. Yeah, no, I guess I thought he was gonna be older than he was, but and that's like totally conjecture. But I feel like he's gonna be a guy who's not gonna play past like 35 or something. Either with his injury
I
history, but he's already made so much money. It just seems like I don't know. I don't see him being the guy who's sticking around at like Roger's age for whatever reason. That's just the vibe.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that I think he's one of those guys that once he hits the age of like 34, 35, his abilities will begin to diminish like at a steeper rate than maybe other quarterbacks. And then he ends up just being a guy that like, is a backup for, 2, 3 years before he's out of the league at like 36, 37.
Yeah, he's going to be such a weird, interesting case to talk about. Like, we'll come back to
Mhm.
this on the podcast in 7 years or whatever when he does
Yeah,
that.
for
But
real.
it'll be interesting to, you could do like a whole episode on going through his career, and that's going to be very interesting because so strange. Like pretty good when not injured. But anyways, a rest in case, you can go down that as much as you want. Um,
So
yeah,
another thing I want to talk about too is kind of what's so what do I think the Bears could do signings wise left? So here's another thing: the center position, which you have, on your note here, is that what are we going to do with the center? I don't like. You currently have Lucas Patrick on the roster, who you thought last year could step in and be a significant starter.
yeah,
Do they think that he still can be? Because my other thought is that like, oh, you could draft a center in the second round, but I think the centers that you're hoping to draft, like AAK, like a guy, Mike, oh, I forget what his name is, something Smith, Schultz Smith, maybe out of Minnesota. He's a
okay,
guy that I would love to see in like the early second round, but we don't have an early second round pick. I think by the time you get to 53, you're probably out of the range for him. So then you're really looking at like, okay, who would be available? And I don't think there's any starting centers past, 45 or pick 45.
yeah.
So, and I had Garrett Bradbury on here, but he just got re-signed by the Vikings. So
Wait,
one of
what?
those where I don't know what's going to happen because I hear that they're interested in some centers, but the centers they're interested in aren't guys that are like, you know, guys I would expect to start to jump in and be, significantly upgraded at starting.
Yeah.
So that's another thing where I just go, same with like tight end, for instance. They need a backup tight end. They need a good tight end to go behind Cole Kmet. I think Cole Kmet's good as your starter. I think he's great. But I'm tired of watching a whole bunch of other tight ends that are going to catch one catch and then never be seen again.
Who's that one dude who caught like 2 to 3 touchdowns in one game in preseason and they didn't keep him
Yeah, it was
around?
Jesper Horsted. It was the guy we were talking about
Yeah.
last week, wasn't it?
Where's my guy? I love getting obsessed with preseason heroes. It's my favorite part of football
But that
before they
was
just
absurd because
disappear.
they were like, oh, we don't want you to start or play any significant minutes. And you're like, the dude has literally done nothing but be productive when he's on the field.
Oh, you know they got rid of Waller for? They got rid of Waller for Jesper Horsted. He's on the Raiders now. And he's only 26.
Well, there you go.
That's so funny. Yeah, no, I mean like those guys come and go and whatever else. I mean, I didn't even think about tight end depth, but I mean, you're totally right. I know they have like they always have that one. The Bears, I feel like for the entire time that I've paid like close attention, have always had a backup tight end that is literally just stocky and like thick as a tree and slow as
Mhm.
hell. Like that's their backup
Yep.
at all times.
Yeah. I
So
mean, now a guy that I would be kind of intrigued with is you would have to use him a lot more in passing or as a pass catcher, but I'd be intrigued by Dalton Schultz
hmm. Mm-hmm.
as
Is
like
he
a.
available though?
Yeah, because I think the Cowboys basically said they're. I think the word is the Cowboys aren't going to resign him, so I think he's available.
Okay. I mean, from what I've seen from him, I was yeah, I got nothing wrong with that. That's good backup. That's good depth. I mean, would they run like
Yeah.
more? I feel like after now that they got DJ Moore, like they're not going to be. Do they transform their offense? Are they going to be? They wouldn't be like a more of a two tight end side. They're going to be, I feel like a pretty normal
No, but they did
offense.
run a decent amount of two tight end sets though, where they had guys like Trevon West go out there and frickin' like so. I feel
Fake
like they
name.
need to get at least a significant upgrade there, than what we frickin' have had.
Yeah, that's an Xbox randomly generated name tag. That's Trayvon Wesco. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think my what I would like to see is a tight end drafted that's actually somewhat, that could be a start, that is at a level where I actually would be happy to see him on the field versus seeing some guy and being like, "Who is that?" Oh, of course he dropped the pass. I don't know who he is. You
Right.
know, I want to see Marcus Davenport would be the big name that I would be ecstatic if we like my excitement for our free agency would jump up again if he we signed him.
Tell me about him.
Uh because I think he would solidify our left end position, and then I think you would only have to worry then about three tech and your right end position,
Okay.
which are still huge positions, but hey, at least we're making progress towards that.
Where's
And
he out
then
of?
Marcus Davenport,
Hmm.
he's from the Saints.
Okay. Gotcha.
So he was pretty. He first 3 years in the league was really did really well for them. Last year, kind of a down year, but it was kind of a down year for like the whole Saints team. So like we're really gonna hold that to him.
Yeah.
So I think he would be a great like left end, and I think because he had a down year last year, you could probably get him at a reasonable price. So I would love to see him there. And then I guess I'm really kind of coming around to the fact that Orlando Brown, if you I want Orlando Brown's number, whatever number he has in his head right now that him and his agent are trying to get. I want that number to come down like 3 million, and then I would be fine.
For how many years though?
I four or five is what I would give him.
Okay.
I
Because I
think
know.
because if you look at Mike McGlinchey's contract, that's like the type of contract that I would be okay with giving Orlando Brown because he's your left tackle.
Okay. Yeah, because I know his whole thing out of the Ravens and playing on the Chiefs on the franchise tag and stuff was he was holding out for that contract and
Hmm.
probably going to be a sticking point for sure. But again,
I think
yeah, I feel like
I'm.
there's merit to that. He's around
I think
still.
yeah. I think I'm somewhere in the range of like 18 to 21 million a year would be great.
Okay. And then you slide Braxton Jones to.
Right tackle.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then what that means is that you then can either take a pass rusher at 9, or you could trade down, still take a pass rusher at whatever you trade down to, and then hopefully you get an early second round pick, and then you could draft like a center or something.
So dream scenario is they sign Orlando Brown, kick Braxton Jones to right tackle,
Hmm.
Ryan Jensen at center, keep Cody Whitehair at guard, and then Tevin Jenkins on the right guard, and then boom. Now you went from absolutely no. I remember at probably week 14, week 15 or whatever, they were talking
Yep.
about how they were going to be pulling people out of the streets to play
Yep.
offensive lineman because everyone was injured, and then you go from that to that
Hmm.
in one off season before
And
we even
then
address the defensive line.
Yeah, and then you talk about how the fact that you would have like backups, you would have like Jatari Carter, who did pretty well at times when he came in when needed, and
Sure.
then you'd have like Alex Leatherwood, who wouldn't have to try to be your starting right tackle. He could instead just be a backup, which would be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you would actually have some like, and then the kid from Illinois that's still in the roster is coming back healthy next year. He would be your backup center, or you keep Lucas Patrick on the roster and you just have him as your backup. Like honestly, signing Orlando Brown means that you have eliminated one massive hole that needed to get filled at some point. And the problem is that the level of starter that you need is either going to be in the first or second round. And you don't, unfortunately, have a lot of those. And you have more holes than you do picks.
Yeah. Which comes with being a bad team for sure.
Mhm.
But
Now, you don't have to address all of those holes in one go. So I'm not saying that I know like what you just gave was the ideal thing, but I
yeah.
don't think they need to like, if they signed Orlando Brown, then the center position, I would be okay with them rolling with Lucas Patrick and just seeing how that goes. Because then when it would be one of those where you're like, well, we still have, our guards situation's fine. We got three starting level guards, and then you've got Orlando Brown and Braxton Jones at tackles, so I'm feeling good about that. Like I would be happy with that, but you need
Yeah.
to address at least at free agency. They need to address one more position on the defensive line and one more position starting level on the offensive line. Whether
Okay.
it's a right tackle, whether it's Orlando Brown, whether it's a center, whether it's a defensive end, or a defensive tackle. They need to address one starting level position on the offensive line and defensive line before they move into the draft. Otherwise, they are really going to be shoot holed into like
Hmm.
hoping that those second round picks hit.
Yeah. And I was like, I was immediately, I was like, yeah, Lucas Patrick's probably going to be a cut though. but he's only on for next year and that's it. And like again,
Hmm.
unless they're thinking that they need to like clear cap space for things, like they're gonna come out of this at the end like I don't know. I mean, they're still gonna have carryover cap space and stuff, but like he's gonna be off
I
the
mean,
books next year, so I don't see why not if
you
you're
sound
stressed.
well. Here's the thing: you sign Orlando Brown. He's 21 million a year. You now have 30 million in cap space left. You go out and sign a few other guys. You end up with like 23 million in cap space or 20 million in cap space. Well, you could automatically, like, if you feel good with Nate Davis and Tevin Jenkins, you could cut Whitehair and end up with 8 million more. So then roughly you would end the season with like 25 million after signing some guys that you need cap space. And then you would still end up with more cap space clear next year because you front loaded some contracts, aka TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds,
Yeah. Okay.
and DJ Moore, because DJ Moore contract was going to drop a couple million.
Mm-hmm.
So you would go into next free agency with maybe like 30, 40 million in cap space, and you could even restructure some contracts if you really wanted to and end up with more. But you would end up with like solid 40 million in cap space where you could go ahead and make two massive signings that put you over the top.
Yeah, and again, that's another thing I keep in mind too is like 2024 in their mind is like the most important year. I don't know what the free agency class looks like, and of course that stuff automatically. I don't even feel like the merits really even looking at a lot of time because
No,
it's
not right
like
now.
yeah, I mean because people get signed, things completely get it's a completely different league every single year. That
Yep.
stuff completely changes. But I mean, in their eyes, yeah, of course you're gonna have cap space available, but like 2024 like is their like if things go according to plan, that's like their best chance. Of course, there's like
Yep.
next year and structure the contract. Hopefully, Fields is good and they resign him. I mean, people are thinking like, oh, your window closes and stuff when you sign a quarterback, but like you want him to be good. If he's not good and you have to let him go, then you're starting over again.
Well,
But
and the thing too
still,
is next year you see Justin Fields. Here's my philosophy: you get Orlando Brown, or you draft Pierce Skronsky and you maybe sign defensive ends in free agency. Maybe you went out and got Marcus Davenport and Yannick Ngakwe, and now you feel good about your defensive line. You don't end up getting Orlando Brown, but you got both of those guys. Then you go draft Skronsky. He's your right tackle. You roll with Lucas Patrick at center. Let's just say that occurs.
mhm.
Then you go into next year with 30, 40 million in cap space, maybe even more because you didn't sign Orlando Brown. So maybe you're talking like 40, 45 million cap space. And then let's say Justin Fields doesn't turn out the way you want. Well, you have two first round picks and a second round pick the next year. So you could make a massive trade, trading two firsts, 2 seconds, and move up and get a quarterback and still be able to plug that quarterback in to a team that's still ascending. So, or you're happy with Justin Fields and then you go out and you use 30, 40 million of cap space and you go out and you sign guys that will put your team over the top because you did well last year and now you just need to get those final pieces and then you two first round picks are actual players that you need, that will come in and contribute, and now we're talking about building a dynasty versus just, that's why like where we're set up is totally okay. I'm totally okay with what we've been doing so far. Dave Montgomery, do I agree with him letting him go? No, definitely not. Do I agree that Caleb McGarry should have been signed for that contract? Yes. But ultimately, like if they address, like I said, one more starter on the offense line, one more starter on the defense line, then I don't have a problem with where we're heading because I know that this year is not like a all in. Like we're not like trying to go and fill every hole this year.
Yeah, yeah, and no, it's that's right too. But you're assuming if they get one more person on defensive line plus draft picks.
Well, so what I'm saying is that you get one more player. So what I'm saying is you go and get like Marcus Davenport, and then maybe you go and sign. I don't know. There's really nobody available on the offensive line that I want at this point. Maybe you go and sign one more center. You know, and so now and then you go into the draft, and you decide that Peter Skronsky is best available. You want him to start at right tackle. You get him.
Okay.
Now, what I'm saying is that next year your pass rush can be upgraded by either those two first round picks or that 30 to 40 million of cap space you'll have to put your team over the top because you addressed all of these other issues now, and you still have some holes, but you now figured out, oh, Justin Fields did excel next year. We're ready to go full in with him for the next 2 years. So then you go and make those signings and you have those picks.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I
But the
think you're the
problem is,
same line of thought that Poles is probably going with, and I feel like that's the
yeah,
best way you can go. You can't full send on Fields. You still have to leave that available. So
yeah, and that's why. But my issue with the Bears right now is that if they don't make any more moves, and we are really just kind of signing like fill-in guys the rest of the time, like depth pieces,
yeah,
then I won't be happy with where we're at because I think that we could have addressed more with what we had available and we didn't.
yeah. Like if you had
So
to
that's why I want
overpay
to see
for
one or
someone
two
like
more signings.
McGrary, like a lot, like even if you had to overpay him like a little bit more, like 5 million a year or whatever, like still you have to anticipate that they have something in the pipeline, or else it's going to feel like a lost opportunity.
That's what I mean. That's why, like, if they can get Orlando Brown to come down on whatever number he's at right now, because if he was at a number that they were happy with, he would be signed. But obviously, whatever number he's coming in with, which you've heard the reports is that he's coming in with a left tackle number, and people want him at a right tackle number. If he's somehow able to meet in the middle, or even come close to that right tackle number that they want, and they sign him, great. If he doesn't, and some other team bites on him and signs him for 28 million a year, well, then I'll be fine with that. Like I'll be fine with the Bears not having to pay that bill.
I just wonder at that point, like who's actually paying that bill? That would be nuts.
The Jets maybe.
Do you want to
They have a
move
bunch of
on to
cap
the
space.
land
They make the
whale?
trade for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, do you want to move on to the land whale? We don't have to spend that much time on it because it's not that interesting, really. I'm quite,
What, the Rodgers stuff?
yeah, if you want to move on to that part. I also just want to, I wanted to point out that I sent you that screenshot, right, of that one guy's Reddit account they deleted.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. That guy feels, that part feels bad. Literally every single thing he posted on there came true, except I think Zerline his cap number was higher. But that
Hmm.
was like early in the day of like the very first day of free agency. Every single thing came true. And of course, the last thing on there is that the Jets already have the deal done for Rodgers. So he's 6 out of 7. And obviously, I feel like it's going to be 7 out of 7. However, if Rodgers got all the people to sign, the Lazards, the whatever the old tight end is, but like, holy,
Mercedes
oh my
knows.
God, I can't believe he's still playing. Dude, I thought he was the Khalil
He's been
Mack
blocking tight end.
destroyer.
That's why.
Yeah, but like, oh my God. If he goes out and he gets them all signed and then he ends up retiring, the modicum of respect is gonna be a little bit higher. It's gonna be so funny
I mean,
for
it'd be
drama.
hilarious because it's the Jets.
It'd be so good. Because then what do they do? They're screwed. It'd be so funny if he just got everyone, like all of his friends, paid and then retired. Now then there'd be another
Yeah.
side of me that'd be like, yeah, that makes sense because like, wow, he's such an asshole. I totally get it.
Well,
But
here's
what
what
the
I'll tell
fuck?
you is if the Jets don't get Rodgers, that would be great for the Bears because then that immediately means that the Jets might panic and want to trade up to 9 if a quarterback drops.
Yeah. And Danny
That's
said
where I
Rodgers
would
needs to
be.
send a croc pick if he goes to the Jets. He's got to complete the cycle, Dylan. It's
He's.
part of it. Step one.
I'm really just confident at this point he's going to the Jets. That's where I've just in my brain. That's what I've put down because I think that ultimately at the end of the day, he's dramatic and he's just going through this whole drama crap in order to just be annoying, and then he's because he has that level of arrogance and that like I'm want to be the story, and so I guarantee you he'll like tomorrow he's supposed to appear on Pat McAfee. Wouldn't surprise me one bit. He goes on there and announces that he's going to the Jets.
But you know what's gonna happen? You know what they're gonna spend the first 10 minutes of the interview doing, being like, "Oh, completely unrelated thing." How they're gonna sit there,
Oh
and
yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
going full total off there. They're gonna sit there and
yep,
suck his dick the entire time and talk
yep.
about it, and then be like, "Oh yeah, no, what's going on in the background?" And they're gonna go, "Ooh," and they're gonna list something, and they're gonna go, "What?" Oh my God, Dylan, I feel like I've been watching it because I've expected things to break on there for it, but man, it makes me want to pilot myself out of a building. It used to be fun in the beginning, especially like
Yeah.
during like the beginning of COVID, but man, I really have
Oh
grown
yeah.
to resent it because they pretend to
During
be
that,
this anti-establishment podcast,
and
and
they
they
were
absolutely
for a bit.
They were for a bit, but now they're still
Yeah.
parading themselves as being like that, and they're absolutely not. They still, like, all the top people in the NFL, they still succumb to them, and they're like, oh yeah, no, they're great, they're doing great. Then they sign the FanDuel contract, and yeah, I know. Would I have done the same thing in their position?
I mean,
Probably.
yeah, but
Probably. And I get that. And I get I'm being hypocritical in that way, but it's not the same, and it's still so much more gross to listen to. But
here's
regardless, that first 10 minutes they're going to do that. They're going to sit there and be like, "Oh,
yeah,
anything interesting going on with you?" "No, just hanging out reading books or whatever." I'm going to be
yeah.
smiling.
They're gonna talk to
Grant.
him about the retreat and how it went and everything, what he was doing, and they're gonna make some bad jokes in there too.
My
I
dumbass is going to be watching it tomorrow
oh
anyways.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you'll be watching it for me because I'll be at work, but then you can let me know what you think.
Uh,
But I just say, what I'll say about the Pat McAfee show is that for a while I enjoyed it because it was entertaining. It did feel like it was different. He was comical. They were comical,
yep.
and to some level, I kind of respect the whole meathead kind of aspect of it. Where you're just like they're just kind of making the dumb jokes and everything. Because like it's funny. I laugh at those. Yeah, I still have that
Yeah.
humor to me a little bit, but it definitely did get where now they're very big and they're very mainstream and they fed into the things that they used to do as like that made them unique, and now they fed into it and now they're mainstream and they're like that band that you listen to that then became popular and now is kind of feeding into it. And it's like I don't like knock them for doing what they did because they're making ridiculous amounts of money doing what they did, and they're still widely watched and everything and viewed. It's just not for me anymore. That's what I'll say is like it's just not for me anymore. I enjoyed it at one point. The podcast that they have with like the guys, where they just review stuff and make dumb jokes. I'll watch that at times because like I want background noise and it's like kind of entertaining to just listen to them banter back and forth about dumb stuff.
Sure.
And it's like it's not like what I'm focusing on, like I'm like it's something that it's just like it's good
Yeah, it's
entertainment,
radio.
voices in the room.
I mean, literally it's the same thing as radio half the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't knock them for doing what they did. I get it. I respect it. I understand they're making a bunch of money. It just has gotten to a point where yeah, they have fed into it way too much, and it's just not for me anymore. And so I'm not entertained by their antics anymore as that used to be.
Yep, that pretty much perfectly sums up my feelings. And again, as soon as I saw that post on there and they're gonna have them, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long conversation, and then it's gonna be one of those where they'll hype it up, build it up, and then he'll say something. And I honestly also there's I'm 50% he's gonna announce that he's going to the Jets, and I'm also 50% he's gonna say that he hasn't made a decision yet. And I'm just
But not that he's gonna retire. None of the
yes,
percentages there. Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, he's gonna leave the door open,
Yeah. I
and the
mean,
Packers are just gonna be sitting there watching, like, come on,
and what is it officially? The tampering period opened on Monday, but like
yep.
Wednesday is the official
Yeah, the
actual
deals can
start.
officially be announced, trades can be officially announced, everything could be,
Yeah.
is official.
I don't think that really has any real merit anymore because the deals are already
No,
actually signed. So I was thinking like, okay, now he's going to make it on that day because free agency started. But like in terms of the Jets' view as an organization, if they didn't know that he's coming there, he kind of already screwed them. But I think he already told them he's coming there. So like they didn't have a disadvantage at free agency, I guess is what I'm saying. Everyone was like, oh, he's going to say something before free agency because then they could sign. And then if
yeah.
it's not, then they could pivot it and everything. But
I
um,
think I think the Packers have expressed to him personally, individually, whatever it is. I think the Packers have expressed to him that he should explore trade, and I think they expressed that to him relatively early on, and that's why the Jets are being so, in on him.
yeah.
And I think it's one of those where he could decide that he doesn't want to get traded. And then I think the Packers are screwed, which is hilarious and it's great and it's entertaining for me because I do not care one inkling about the Packers in their future, other than I hope that it is just the downward spiral. But I think it's entertaining, and I think he is so annoying that I think it's going to be one of those where, like I said, I'm in between. I'm 50-50. He's either announcing he's going to the Jets, or he's going to say that he's leaving the door open. He hasn't made a decision.
I am. It's so hard for me. I feel like I'm more on the side that there's going to be something at least, because I feel like Pat McAfee's show and stuff. If he's trying to give them a scoop and all that stuff and giving them like the news and all that, he's probably going to be doing them a disservice of not giving them a scoop. But he's still going to boost their numbers for the day. I don't know. That's tough because at the same time, if I'm trying to think from like a really dumb meatball point of view, it'd be like, I thought he was gonna go on there, like that's why I'm watching and everything,
Yeah,
like that's why they'd be upset. But at the same time, he'd
I
still be bringing a bunch of attention there.
but I
I
feel
don't
like he
know.
could also just be like, I haven't decided where I want to go, but I know that I'm not retiring from football or something like that. Like I feel like he could even say something like that, and it would be like, oh, okay, so you're still in the game. You're just it's Packer. We're still open to possibility. That's
Right?
how they could spin it on the show, where then it's like, well, who knows? He doesn't know.
Yeah, the amount of
Is
times
it
that they
stupid?
book.
Yeah, but I mean, that's Aaron Rodgers is like it's starting to get to like LeBron with the decision level of like just say it, just announce it for the love of God. Like we don't like LeBron had a whole hour special regarding it, which is historic by the way, and is going to be in his documentary when they make it. But just for the love of God, say it. Like LeBron was at a different level. LeBron was the best player in basketball when that occurred. Aaron is not. So like just say for the love of God whether you're going to go finish your career with the Jets and probably not win anything, or if you're going to stay with the Packers and they're going to hate you and you're going to ride out the last year or two of your 50 million a year contract, being a 9-8 team.
Yeah, and I've seen this take a couple of times more recently too. And Danny brought up with Aaron Rodgers being the GOAT. I know that's a joke, but like also that is actually said unironically a couple of times, and I cannot say I disagree more. Technically and like mechanically, he's insane, but like, come
Mm-hmm.
on, repeat like really, is that something that actually people truly
No,
believe?
he falls in the category for me of like absurdly talented quarterback that is a tier below the Mahomes,
Steve Young.
like Tom Brady, yeah, like he falls in that category of like if you're going by quarterbacks who are insanely talented and didn't win, Jay Cutler is the first one that pops in my head. Insanely talented quarterback that never won. I mean, he had insane talent.
Yeah.
And then the next level is like insane talent that never won, like Dan Marino. And then like insane talent that did win, Aaron Rodgers. But like that doesn't to me mean like that tier of like insane talented quarterbacks is below the tier of like quarterbacks that were talented and also won a bunch and were more successful. Like
Yeah.
that's where, you know,
Yeah. I remember that I had the picture of him that was on the sideline of them facing the 2015 Broncos defense the year they won the Super Bowl. And it was like it was like Sunday Night Football promo that basically said it was like lowest like yards per game of his career, and it was like 75 yards. I had that printed out and like posted on my wall in my dorm room for the longest time because it was fantastic. And
yeah, like
they
the
don't
level
usually
where I
have those games against like those top tier ones you're talking about.
yeah, like where I put Aaron Rodgers is like he is insanely talented and has won a Super Bowl, but like Peyton Manning, better quarterback, more winning. But he's
Mhm.
not as like Peyton Manning's not as talented as Aaron Rodgers, like quarterback wise, just pure like arm talent and everything. But Peyton Manning, I think, is a better quarterback all around, and he won more.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's Steve Young at least won more than one Super Bowl. Yeah, that's true, actually. So Eli
And I know
Clear.
that technically Peyton's second Super Bowl was basically like but those years before that were like insane. I mean, he still has the record for the most most passing yards and most touchdowns in a season or something.
Right. Yeah.
So
So that was just a small address to that take because I've seen that and I'm just like, no, no, I don't even think anyone really entertains that at this point. Maybe like in 2010 and stuff in 2015, but
I think the
yeah.
years of like 2013 to like 2017 people were like I would have fallen in that category of, you know, Tom has won more but I think Aaron Rodgers is better than him, and I would prefer to have Aaron Rodgers.
Sure. Yeah.
But then now we've hit that point where I go, okay, no, that conversation is completely out of it. I would rather have Tom, and Tom is one more. Aaron Rodgers is still more talented, but you know, like I wouldn't even have him in the same conversation as Tom Brady.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's gonna go to the Jets. I know they play the Cowboys this year. I don't think they have a game against the Packers because then that one's immediately getting put on Sunday Night
Yeah,
Football.
the Jets are going to go 10-7 if they have him. That's how I feel. They're going to go 10-7, and they're probably going to get knocked out in the first round.
Is that well? Actually, you got to remember at the same time too. They're not going to get a crazy schedule because they still ended up finishing middle of the pack last year.
Yeah, but they might get more primetime games. Like like the scheduling might be a little bit where like they flex one game and put the Jets game at the top. Like he's still going to get like that's why I think they go 10-7 because I think that they have a relatively easier schedule, and you know they're able to put together a season where it wasn't the best looking season, but they're 10-7 and they're in the playoffs and they control their own destiny, and they lose in the first round. Like that's how I feel about them.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I'm not really gonna argue too much against that. I think that if they all of a sudden with like Brees Hall being back, if they shift to being like a run first team and then have them like on play action, that seems super deadly. But again, I feel like there's gonna be some amount of regression for their defense and stuff too. So gotta account for
Yep,
that.
that's
But
what I mean. There's going to be a level of regression. There's going to be a level of scheming and stuff like that, and whether or not the defense is as good as they've been, because if defense isn't as good, then that's going to be an issue then, because you saw that with the Packers this year. So that's why I just go probably 10-7, 9-8 on a bad year for them. 10 and
which
7 probably is the good year for them, and then they probably get knocked out of the playoffs the first round.
which to me the most exciting part of that about that too is also to get to see Jordan Love in the full season of like game tape and what he looks like.
Especially when the Bears with Jordan Love as the starter, I think would be pretty equal as far as like roster talent and everything. And then it would be just a determinant of is Justin the better quarterback, and then you would hope I think you would probably see that, and then it'd be fun to be a Bears fan again. So
I think like regardless, those games are going to be a lot more fun because I feel like there was always this I mean, like, I don't know. You're still like, of course, like game day. It's like, oh yeah, no, maybe it could be different. But I feel like there's this like inevitable, like, oh, okay, at some point
mhm,
they're gonna pull it out, or there's gonna be a pass interference, or there's gonna be a phantom flag or whatever. And that could still
mhm.
be true, but I feel like there's gonna be less of that favoritism, like Jordan Love starting. I feel like maybe they'll actually be like fun, interesting, unwritten games.
Yeah,
Because I feel like I think I died week one of 2018 or 2019. That's when I pretty much everything the flame went out because
yep,
I was like, well, it was pretty interesting in 2018, but then 2019, seeing them be up that much and still lose to come back because then they get the really cool picture and like narrative of him coming back. I was like, okay, so this is kind of like
yep.
this is written in, this is inevitable. We're not escaping this until he's gone. So
Yeah, so I think this probably being our last little topic of this whole thing. Yeah, I think ultimately Aaron Rodgers probably announces tomorrow that he's going. My prediction, he announces that is going to the Jets, and then everybody goes through like, oh my God, he's on the Jets. He's doing a Brett Favre, and and then hopefully we get some Bears news around something. Like hopefully they're making one more signing.
yeah, I mean, we've had a couple things each day, so maybe we can
Well,
also
you're
get really
starting.
good news.
Well, and like you said, you start to hit. You said this earlier. You start to hit the second wave of free agency, and that second wave of free agency is where you start getting guys at more reasonable contracts because the first wave of free agency went and gone, and they didn't get signed at the number that they were expecting to be signed at. So then they lower their number, aka kind of what you saw with Jacoby Myers, because people were saying that he was going to get
Yeah,
like 20
wow.
million, and then he got like 11. So you know,
Wow, I was really surprised at that. Like they must have absolutely tanked the market more than I guess everyone thought.
Well, and he was supposed to be the best contract or best player available. Besides, I mean, yeah, you can talk talent wise that maybe Odell Beckham Jr. is more talented, but like Jacoby Myers was the best, receiver in this market because he was a good route runner, good, good catch radius. He could go up and get a ball every when if you need it. He's probably a good number two on a team, so you want to, you go and solidify your receiving core by getting him. If you already have that number one in place and you want a guy to go next to him, he's that guy. AKA what the Raiders did. I just didn't expect him to get less money than he did. I thought he would end up signing for like 17 a year. Like, I mean,
Oh
if you
yeah,
saw what Kirk got last year, you're thinking like, oh, Jacoby Myers is going to get 17, 18 a year.
yeah,
And then he ended up getting 11, which is actually a really good contract for the Raiders because you're getting a guy who's a perfect number two next to Devontae Adams.
yeah. And then Hunter
So
Renfro kicked to third
yeah.
or slot. So actually,
I
where would they be at? They both be at slot. Hmm.
because well, Jacoby Myers can play the slot, but I mean, you're going to let Devontae Adams play wherever he wants to play. But when you have him on the outside, you can put Dion. You can put, my guess is you have Devontae Adams on the outside. Maybe you slot him into the corner, into the slot when you want to run specialty plays. But Hunter Renfro is your slot guy. So then Jacoby Myers is really just your guy that's going to play on the outside as a number two.
Yeah, Danny said sign Josh Gordon, which also 100% on board with that one. So naturally, we got
Honestly,
to
with
throw
this
that.
team, I'd be fine with it.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
You already got five receivers that you're happy with, and you already have a number one now. You have a number two. You have a number three receiver. I honestly, at this point, like you're, like if they signed him and we didn't have DJ Moore, I'd be like, you killing me. But now I'd be like, yeah,
You're
screw it,
testing my
why not?
faith, Pulse. You're killing me, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we got DJ Moore, so now it's like that's why having a number one wide receiver is so much more relieving because, like now if they made that Gordon signing, I'd be like, cool, like why not? Like talented receiver who is going to join a team, and guess what? If he ends up sucking and ends up being our sixth receiver, well then guess what? We got five other receivers ahead of him that we're fine with. Like,
yeah, exactly. He's just there. He's supposed to be playing in the XFL right now.
yeah, he has. I've
Interesting.
watched a couple of his highlights actually.
Oh, I
Yeah,
imagine he's probably mossing everyone there.
he's had some pretty nice plays. So that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about is having the freedom to be like, yeah, we'll take a flyer on Josh Gordon for a year, see if he's got anything left in the tank.
Yeah, sure.
If he does, great. If he doesn't, well, then we just bury him on our depth chart and we don't care because we got other receivers.
Yeah, that's right. The devil's lettuce is legal here after all,
It's true.
so he could probably run with it and be fine. Well, at least in the meantime, there's going to be in between. Obviously, like the draft time will speed up, but then March Madness will be able to carry us for the most part to
Yeah, dude,
almost
we didn't
draft.
even address March Madness coming up in this podcast, but just as a little, I guess, teaser, because we'll just leave it here, because again, I think we've already almost gone 2 hours, and I don't think we can continue going. Uh, I next week, I think we'll do a big thing on the. So we didn't make any brackets because we're both behind on our March Madness came up in a hurry. I am not ready for it, and so I have to make a bracket. I got to really prepare the next couple days and get ready for that. So we'll prepare. We're both going to prepare brackets. We will both come back. Think we're even going to have probably Craig join us, which would be good because he
Yeah,
knows way more about college basketball and teams and how it's going. He can let us know how the first 2 weeks went.
which is important. We
Uh,
have to make our brackets before because when we
Yeah,
look
we
at them,
have
I
to
want
make
to
our
be
brackets
like,
over the next 2 or 3 days, and
yeah,
then bring those brackets in. We'll address all of our brackets, see how they went, see how busted they are in the first, weekend, and then we'll have Craig on. We'll talk all about the rest of the tournament because then at that point, Sweet 16 and on, and we'll have a big March Madness segment to start the show next week.
yeah. Brackets will be due around noon on Thursday, so
Yeah,
if you're feeling really procrastinating, I think I'm trying to get mine done by like evening tomorrow.
yeah. I'm tomorrow. My goal is to finish homework because if I finish all my homework, then I don't have to worry about the rest of the weekend. So my goal is tomorrow to finish homework, and if I have the other time after homework, then I will probably do bracket because then my Thursday plan is to clean my apartment so that way my parents coming on Friday for St. Patrick's Day weekend will be a breeze. So That's the
Yeah.
goal. So I should be making my brackets hopefully tomorrow. I'm probably gonna make more than one because that's how I always do it. Two or three of them probably. But
Yeah.
I'll have one that'll be my main bracket that I'll present next podcast.
Yeah, I want to know what your thinking is when you go into each game because I'm gonna totally overthink it and get blown up anyways because that's what's fun. So
I have not been making attention a ton. I feel like I need to call Craig tomorrow and talk to him before I make
the
my bracket, but
insider info. Yeah.
really. But yeah, I
Well,
think we'll probably have him on next weekend or next week to talk to us about because me and you are so very clearly versed in all things March Madness.
hey man, I went super hard on Houston the past 2 years and it did pretty okay. So I was kind of proud on how that went.
You
Not better
know,
than
and
expected,
every
but
year
not
that I've
perfect.
done the competition with my family, my mom has won like 80% of the time. So
I'll have to send you the info for another bracket challenge too, because I think you'll have another bracket at least on my side.
yeah. Yeah, we got to get that going. Holy crap. It came up so fast that I even forgot to like organize something of that nature for brackets. And so
Yeah,
now here it is. I mean, I could try to like maybe message everybody tomorrow and see, but God, that came up so quickly.
I
Jesus.
know, I know, I know.
It just like came upon me. I like honestly I felt like it was next week, but like it's I mean, well, all right, so we'll make our brackets. We'll come back strong on next Tuesday. We'll have Craig on. We'll talk. We'll do a whole March Madness segment because we got to make up for the fact that we didn't talk about it literally today when it was before the March Madness was occurring. But listen, guys, we are second podcast in. We're on our way back. So, you know,
Yeah,
it's
with the breakup segments and stuff too. That's also difficult as well.
yeah, we're getting back into a swing of it. We're still going our full 2 hours because we end up talking way too much about topics.
Yeah, I there was one guy I was going to ask you about the just really quickly the Chargers Matt Filer he released to their guard. He had eight and a
That
half
is
million
who
pit.
is it? What's the name?
Matt Filer, Feiler. I don't know if he's good. If he got released for that little money, it seems like probably not.
I don't think so. I think he's kind of he's a guy that like if you need him to slot him in because you don't have anything better as an option, that's fine. Or
Okay.
if you have a good offensive line and you need one more guy to fill in and you're okay with filling him in because you have other guys next to him that are exceptional. I'm not interested unless he's a backup. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That was just a last minute thing, but yeah, we'll go ahead and end it here.
All right. Well,
So
everybody, we'll be back next week for
March
March
Madness next
Madness.
week. Woohoo.